Yeah, no, we finally got here, didn't we?
Yes.
We've been trying for ages.
It's, you know what though, we've got some good content out of like out of wandering basically, so that's fine by me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes failing to get it done is
Ah.
is
It's the nature of strange playgrounds. It's the way these things
it's
go. I almost imagine that the audience expect it now.
yeah. Well, it's certainly that's my podcasting career until I latched on to Daniel, and somebody who actually does proper work.
You need
My
someone.
podcasting career has
Yes.
just been just repeatedly fail and hope people find it charming, and
Well,
it's worked.
that's why I don't do as many of just the episodes of Strange Playgrounds where it's just me waffling now, because I do tend to not focus on what I'm talking about and just go off on wild tangents all over the place. When I'm talking to someone else, they can rein me in a little bit.
I do like your solo waffling shows, though. I genuinely do.
There
I
will be
love them.
more. There will be more. There's a couple
Good,
coming
good.
up. I mean, I tend not to get if I notice there's some drama happening in communities on Twitter or whatever, I tend to avoid it. Even if it's something I feel passionate about, I tend to avoid it because I just it there's a I used to get involved in everything once upon a time. There was a time when I would argue with
Yeah.
homophobes and whatnot and so forth, and I argue vociferously forever and ever. I'm sure somewhere lost to the depths of YouTube history, there are long comment threads where there are just paragraphs of shit where I've been arguing with
Oh,
people and whatnot.
yeah.
But I don't do it anymore. There came a point where I was like, you know what? I'm expending psychological energy here on nothing, really. So I don't.
I'm very similar. Yeah, no, by nature, I'm very conflict averse.
Yeah.
Conflict generally upsets me, because of stuff in family stuff and childhood
Hmm.
stuff and so on. So generally, like conflict arises, I just run. But
Yeah.
also, of course, I have I it's no secret that I'm an opinionated person. So I have these two impulses that drive me both ways. And yeah, if you looked at my internet footprint from
Hmm.
uh, like maybe 2008, 2009, you'd
Hmm.
see an awful lot of what I now see as completely pointless,
Right.
rancorous arguing
Right.
with
That's
various
it.
people about various things.
I
Yeah.
don't know why I thought it was worthwhile. That's what kind of irks me now. I don't know why I thought it was going to have any kind of positive impact, because one thing I have learned is that it doesn't. Certainly not with the people you're arguing with. I mean, there may be sort of like a more an ambient effect, where people coming to whatever thread or whatever, reads it or whatever. But even then, I doubt it. On those venues and those platforms, I kind of doubt it. But I mean, there's a couple of things going on in certain communities on Twitter at the moment that I think are actually beyond whatever conflict is spawned from them. I think the subjects are actually really interesting and worth having a discussion about. A proper one,
Yeah.
not just an
Yeah.
argument or not just a rant about. So there's
Well, I, I'm even refuted that I'm involved in at the moment.
oh
Because
no.
our last IDSG involved criticizing some people, not far right or anything
Mhm.
like that, but criticizing some people who were sort of broadly on the same side as us. And
Right,
I think we
yes.
did it judiciously and politely, etc. But the reaction has been,
Quite strong, I'd
yeah,
imagine. Yeah,
not
yeah.
good.
No, it's an interesting one. I mean, it's something that came up kind of recently. I mean, I listened to your episode where you talked about the recent assaults on Pride. Um, and that was really interesting
Oh
because
yeah,
that has what I found absolutely fascinating about that, and what it's brought to the forefront of my mind is that even many of those who consider themselves allies and are allies, in most areas, still suffer from the problems of sort of heteronormative tradition and culture, where there is still this assumption that those arenas that are ours, sorry, they belong to us, and they're for us, that they have authority over them, and that they should somehow reconfigure themselves to accord with heteronormative tastes and norms. And that is like, yeah, you know what, you can back off a little bit.
Yeah.
You can
No,
shut up a little bit and let us talk,
absolutely. Yeah, there's an awful lot of straight allies
Hmm.
of queer, but of course I am a straight person myself, so
Right,
there's
right.
only there's that I can get outside of this and look in.
Hmm.
You like to think you can do that, but obviously you are ultimately bounded by your positionality. So I'm
Right.
probably there's that I can get outside of this and look in.
Hmm.
You like to think you can do that, but obviously you are ultimately bounded by your positionality. So I'm
Right.
probably guilty. Well, I know I am. I'm guilty of this as everybody is. But look, there's a hell of a lot of people, and I see it. Straight allies
Hmm.
who basically what they're saying they would not like this or admit it, or they'd probably be offended if you said it. But if you boil down what they say a lot of the time, it amounts to like, no, I'm totally in favor of queer people. I just
Yeah, I just don't like them when they're being queer.
yeah
It's
yeah.
it's so bizarre. And it is very easy to get
Couldn't you be
really,
yeah,
yeah.
couldn't you be less queer so as to make it easier for us to be on your side?
Could you just actually stop being so queer, please? That is basically what it boils down to, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if you want to be an ally, if you want to be in those spaces, then you're gonna have to take it on our terms, I'm afraid. Don't take your fucking
Yeah.
kids. I'm really sorry, but they don't belong to your fucking kids.
Well, yeah,
If you
this is it. You know, if this is an event where you might see something that kids shouldn't see, don't take the kids
Well,
to
the
it.
thing is, I don't even think you would. That's the thing. I mean, I've been to Pride events before, and are there images of like kink and sexuality there? Yes, there are, absolutely, but they're not like overt or anything like. It's certainly nothing that most children would find disturbing or whatever. I mean, it
Exactly.
actually
Yeah.
broaches onto a much bigger topic for me, which is the discussion of um, developmental sexuality and bodily autonomy and whatnot and bodily awareness, which in this culture, in this country, has been completely stunted by the utter hysteria of our news media and certain subjects. Like, I mean, I don't get me wrong, obviously child abuse is a real thing. It's such a powerful, hideous thing that needs to be tackled. But at the same time, the way our news media has latched onto it and promote and sort of used it in our culture has generated this hideous hysteria where you can't even have an adult conversation now about the nascent sexual identity, you know? It's almost
Yeah. No.
impossible. And that really infuriates me. That really infuriates me because it's this sort of culture-wide denialism. Because you know what? We all know that children and young people have a nascent bodily curiosity which ultimately becomes a kind of nascent sexual identity. We all know that. We are aware of that because we've experienced it.
Yeah, we remember being kids. We
Right.
remember that we were fascinated with bodily functions and each
Right.
other's bits and stuff like
Yes.
that. We
Yes.
were there. We remember.
Yeah,
But yeah, as you say,
absolutely.
it's one of those things that has just been made verboten
It's
in the
completely. You can't talk
in
about it. You cannot talk about it. Um, and I
yeah.
find the denialism of it and the stunting of it as dangerous as any other kind of adult interference. That's the problem, isn't it? It's when adults interfere in this in any which way and pervert it and corrupt it, as adults are wont to do.
Mm. And also, how do human? I mean, I'm far from an expert on these matters, so, but how do humans develop healthy adult sexuality? It's not like you get switches on,
Hmm.
that you develop it through experiences, and those
Right.
experiences are ongoing from young childhood through adolescence into adulthood,
Absolutely.
including like being exposed. being exposed to things that are part of adult sexuality before you are yourself adult and sexual.
Right.
I mean, this is why. And it's just, I mean, it's the, won't somebody think of the children moral panic always?
Yeah,
That's weaponized
it's
against
always the same.
minorities and oppressed groups.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a set of assumptions which it manifests in like the perception content in like expressions of gay or queer sexuality, whereas expressions of heterosexuality are just like considered neutral.
This
Like
is the
this
other
is
thing, this is the other thing. I mean, I think I
yeah.
said on Twitter that like heteronormative culture is a whorehouse. It's a
Oh
whorehouse.
yeah.
You just don't
Yeah.
see it. You just don't see it because it is considered normal, Which is, don't get me wrong, it's fine by me. I don't have a problem at all with images of sexuality or of the naked male, like human body or whatever. I don't have any problem with that. What I do have a problem with is the hypocrisy. I mean, the thing I pointed out is go back and look at the chocolate adverts in the UK since the 1970s.
Oh God,
Go
yeah.
and look at them. How many of
The
them
flake,
use like
the
the flake
flake.
adverts, right? How many of them use visual shorthand for women orgasming? A lot is the
Yeah,
answer.
yeah. Well, when you're a kid, you're taken on school trips to museums, right?
Hmm.
And they take you to places that are full of depictions of naked women.
Right.
And it's because the context is this dominant, enshrined establishment narrative, patriarchal narrative,
Yep.
um, and people don't perceive it as sex. Well, 19th century allegorical depictions of truth or liberty or whatever that are women without clothes on, they're
Hmm.
not sexually neutral. They're
Right.
embedded in patriarchal male heterosexuality, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But we take kids in there, and that's fine
Hmm.
because I mean, the thing I keep coming back to with this kink of pride thing is Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns is something that I come back to often anyway, for reasons that needn't be discussed.
Right, but
But
who
look,
doesn't? Gay or straight, quite frankly, who doesn't? She's amazing.
she's incredible, but that is an intensely sexual depiction, and
Yeah, oh my
it's
God. It's like,
steeped in kink,
yeah,
and it's
BDSM
directly even
and
like animal play, right?
right, right.
And one of the big moral panic things that they use is this photo of like this little kid talking to guys who are in like fetish dog
Hmm.
mask stuff,
Hmm.
and that is Batman Returns was PG-13, which means you
Right.
could take your 6-year-old in there as long as
Hmm.
she's society says she can see that. It's okay. She might need a parent there to guide her here, there,
Hmm.
and whatever, but she can see it and it won't warp her mind. Whereas
Right.
it's just a given to so many people that photographs this little girl is in some kind of
Some
danger,
sort of
and the
danger,
danger
yeah.
is yeah, it's not defined, and the
Hmm.
minute you ask people to define it, they go into, oh, well, I'm not saying this, and I'm not saying that,
Hmm.
and I'm not saying the other. Well, what the hell are you
What
saying?
are you
And it's,
saying
but it's,
then? Yeah.
yeah,
What
yeah.
are you
You're
saying
saying,
exactly?
and the most charitable possible interpretation is that they just in some way perceive the presence of gay sexuality as some sort of threatening thing, whereas they
Yeah.
don't even perceive, as you say, that the whorehouse of heteroculture as even being present at all.
Absolutely. And you know what? Statistically, if you really want to talk about danger to the child, if we're going to talk about it rationally and statistically, it's the father you want to look out for. Really
Totally,
sorry.
yeah,
That's the truth of the
yeah.
matter.
The, the
Um,
heterosexual father.
right. That statistically is the truth of the matter. It may be very uncomfortable, but it's the truth. Oh
Yeah,
man,
and I'm
yeah.
afraid it's baked into the nuclear family as well.
Yeah, yeah, it
It's not just
is.
this unfortunate thing that happens sometimes. The
No, it's
nuclear
not.
family, by its design, is this separated, isolated thing where
Hmm.
people on the outside can't look in, that is designed as like a forum for male patriarchal power over the family and ownership of the children and wife. It's
Oh my God.
the
I
the
mean,
ability of the man to to do as well, and we just don't want to talk about this.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I talk to women of like my mother's generation and older, and not I know so many as well. You know, gay guy. I've got lots of women friends. It happens. Some stereotypes are kind of true, and not a one of them is free from some kind of abuse, whether that's
Yeah,
familial
no.
or from other male figures in their lives. Not a one of them. Some of them didn't even consider it to be abuse because it was just normalized. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And that is incredible, isn't it?
It's one of those problems that's almost so big it can't be talked about. Like
Yeah.
in the 19th and 20th centuries, the omnipresence of alcoholism in Western European political institutions, just politics power was soaked in alcohol at every point, and it was just right. I think it's less now. I genuinely do.
Yeah,
but it was never
is.
dealt with because it was just too huge to deal with.
Yeah.
And I think the omnipresence of male physical, emotional, sexual abuse over women is just it should be dealt with, obviously, but it's just so vast. Society literally doesn't know how to have the conversation. It's a bit like climate change as well.
Yeah.
We're having more of the conversation now than we've ever had before in my lifetime, and yet we're still not even really having the conversation we need to have, and so much of that just seems to me because the conversation is just so huge and overpowering and paralyzing.
Yeah, I also think part of that is because you've got like an entire generation, i.e. sort of our generation, that was so pummeled with it from the get-go, really. Like, oh, this is your responsibility, you 3 and 4-year-olds. Here, we're going to give you Captain Planet. We're going to give you school lessons about this impending apocalypse. And like, it's like, well, what can we do? I do find that our generation in particular is kind of neutered in that regard. The younger generations are going for it. They're actually doing shit. There are people who are actually doing shit about it. But I do find that our generation is so fucking traumatized from every which way. I've only, I only started thinking about it recently, but like certainly when I was a kid, I was born in 1984. And when I was at school, every message from every arena was one of impending apocalypse. Everything. It was either going to be economic apocalypse, it was pandemics, it was diseases, it was climate catastrophes. It was everything you could possibly think of. You had bleeding across from the US, of course, at that time, the satanic moral panic, the collapse of society.
Wow.
Everything that was even in our fucking cartoons and comics and whatnot, that's what it was. It was Ted Turner telling us that we have the power, when in fact, fucking billionaires telling us we have the power when we have no fucking power at all and never have. It was quite incredible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit older than you, but I grew up in the sense of sort of became a thinking person, which I think happens to you in your teens and early 20s, in the 90s, really, the late 80s, early 90s, and so we're roughly the same generation. And I think we are just paralyzed by this, and I think it does go back to I've said this before on other podcasts. The response of the generation of adults that taught us to climate change was to get us to draw pictures in school about how the environment was important.
Right.
That was what you did about it. You got the kids to draw posters saying recycle and draw a rainbow and one world and stuff like that. Job done, right? And we, as you say, we grew up with stuff like Captain Planet and very salutary ecological messages in all our TV, but absolutely no political avenues for action.
No action whatsoever. Like nothing. Incredible stuff.
Because we grew up. We grew to adulthood in the period of the absolute complete suffocating triumph of neoliberalism, the end of history.
Mm-hmm.
And, the most you could do was vote New Labour. That was it.
Yeah, and we all know how that turned out, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Yeah, of course. The irony of the Captain Planet thing just escalates and escalates when you consider that produced from Captain Planet were endless VHSs that were made of plastic which was created from oil, which were then thrown away into landfills. There were toys that were produced with non-ecologically friendly packaging and out of plastic once again, so in non-ecologically friendly ways, which of course also ended up in landfills and wherever. So yeah, it's quite incredible, isn't it?
But that's capitalism for you. It will create the end of the world, and then it will commodify the end of the world and sell it to you.
And then tell you that it's your fault and that it's your responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
That's what gets
that's
me.
Right.
That's what gets me. Telling like 3 and 4 year olds, oh, you have the power. You've got to do something about it.
Yeah. And then the first time anybody actually takes that seriously and turns up at Seattle in 1999 or 2000 or whatever it was, out comes the tear gas and the billy clubs.
Right. Or the moment you actually get a child who actually does stand up for something, they get ridiculed and tarred and feathered. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Just on the, I don't know why I'm obsessing about Captain Planet this evening, but did you ever see the episode about AIDS?
I never really watched it, to be honest with you. I was aware of it, but I never really watched it.
There was an episode that the thing about Captain Planet was it was not only just ecological things. It was like pet issue of the week.
Oh right, yeah.
Whatever was in the papers at the moment, we will make an episode about, and we will make it very, very, very poorly. So there are episodes about drug addiction. There are episodes about. There's even one about the troubles in Northern Ireland, which is quite incredible.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right. There is an episode about that. But there's an episode about AIDS.
Oh dear.
Which is wow.
I bet.
Yeah. Worth watching. Worth watching as an artifact of abstract horror. Something to be stared at and appalled by, the irony is the message of the episode isn't necessarily bad. It isn't necessarily bad. There is a young guy in it who has AIDS who is vilified by sort of like his local community, and it takes Captain Planet and the Planeteers is educating everyone, to make him not vilified again. But at the same time, I always find this problematic, this notion of like, oh, let's get the magic people in to solve the problem. Yeah. I have an issue with that. I have a massive issue with that. It tells you constantly, oh, the power is yours. That was the tagline for Captain Planet. Well, clearly fucking not. Because all that ever happens in the episodes is they use their magic to summon Captain Planet and everything's put right, It's almost like a tacit admission.
Yeah,
There's like a tacit admission in the show that it takes a miracle to solve some of these problems, a miracle that doesn't actually exist outside of cartoons.
That is fantastic. That's like the ultimate neoliberal response to cultural neoliberal response to the very problems that neoliberalism creates, which is to say, the power is yours. You can do it.
Right.
What is it that I can do? What is my power?
Yeah. What can I do?
Essentially, market mechanisms. Yeah, that's what. Because market mechanisms, they are the ultimate magic. They will, if you just make obeisance and sacrifice to the market, then the god market will sort everything out for you.
Of course. What I loved, I was up until very recently, I was critical of Captain Planet because the villains are so ridiculous. They don't have any motivation beyond utterly self-destructive comic book villainy. They pollute because they pollute because they pollute, because it's actually a thing that they do outside of any like byproduct of, say, selfishness or just a simple lack of regard. They do it because it's fun or whatever. But you know what? Now, having seen what's developed within culture, what has risen its hideous head, in recent years, I'm sort of like, you know what? That's more real than I ever gave it credit for.
Well, it's a better. It seems like a better depiction of like material industrial pollution, because that's ultimately, of course, all about profit. Pollution and environmental devastation generally is obviously it's about capital accumulation. That's why that happens. So that's not going to end up in the cartoon. But like this willful nihilistic, I just want to pollute the world because I love polluting. I want to make the world as dirty as I am, or as dirty and debased as I feel. That rings true. It's just that it's the internet, basically.
Exactly. This is it. There are certain like subcultures on the internet that are that enshrine their own baseness and their own psychological filth, and actually enshrine it as something wonderful. It's the whole sort of incel movement, isn't it, for one thing?
It's fascism generally.
Fascism,
I would say, is like
a
dirty protest against civilization itself.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree.
Certainly on that sort of individual level, it has its deeper economic logic when it comes to power politically, but certainly sort of on the level of individual scrawling obscenities over the Bayeux tapestry because you just hate everything.
Right, yeah, and because the world isn't as you want it to be, because there are people out there who exist and I don't like that they exist, whining temper tantrums, that's what I see generally. It's just children. I'll be honest, like just children, spoiled brat children, in those movements. It's quite incredible to me. Quite incredible. Anyway, we're actually here to talk about Alien 3. We are here to talk about Alien 3, by the way, guys. Just, again,
I was going to say,
we're obviously.
We're 25 minutes into our chat and we're still not managing to succeed to talk about Alien 3.
That's good. That's not too bad, actually, as they go. I mean, that's all right. 25 minutes isn't too bad. I've gone on for hours before with Kit and with Lex and with others, before we've actually hit what we were going to talk about. But man, yeah, Alien 3, I've always enjoyed it. Enjoyed it.
You are breaking up a lot, actually.
I am actually now. Actually, I tell you what, before we start proper, can I just restart the call? I think that might help.
Sure, yeah.
Let's see if that'll help.
Yeah.
But yeah, Alien 3, it's an amazing piece of work. It's an absolutely amazing piece of work. I've always enjoyed it, more so than most people seemed to, up to a point. I found it's always gotten short shrift. It tends to be lumped in with the lesser of the Aliens films.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's probably one of my favorite movies, if I'm honest.
Right. I think it's absolutely beautiful. It has had a bit of a renaissance recently. I've noticed that certainly in like horror communities, people tend to be coming round to it and they tend to talk about it much more fondly now than they ever used to before. Because of course when it was first released, the critical response was just damning and the audience response was lukewarm at best.
Well, it's interesting. I can't remember the magazine, but I remember when it came out, I was very hyped because I'd kind of only just discovered Alien. Somebody had given me the Aliens special edition on VHS.
I was going to say, was this on VHS? Yeah.
Yeah, it had just come out, and I loved that because I was 15 or 16 or something.
Perfect time to see that film. I mean, I love Aliens too. Aliens is a great film, but it's very much like it's the action film of the series, isn't it? It doesn't have like the weight of the other films. It's a very well made action film in the Aliens universe.
Well, this is like a huge subtopic, but I'm quite hostile to Aliens these days.
Really?
I'm quite down on it. But yeah, at the time anyway, somebody gave me the special edition and I was 16 and I loved it. So of course I got the VHS of the first film and the first film. The first film is one of the most important movies to me that there is. It's totally just part of who I am.
Yeah.
So. And it was, as I say, it was like almost immediately I get into Aliens, and along comes Alien 3 at the cinema, so I'm very hyped. So I'm reading all the reviews, and I can't remember one of the first ones I read. I can't remember what magazine it was in, but it was very, very positive.
Really?
It was very appreciative. It called the movie beautiful, and it was very pro. And then it felt like you could almost watch it happening in real time. Suddenly, bad reviews started appearing, and it was like because critics, of course, have this herd mentality thing. Nobody wants to be the one that likes the thing that everybody agrees is bad.
It's absolutely true.
It was like a flock of birds changing direction. It was something that everybody go, oh no, hang on, no, I don't like this.
Wait, yes.
Yeah.
This prominent critic said that it was terrible, so it must be terrible. When I said it was good, what I meant was.
And of course, the fans were disappointed because what the fans generally wanted was like Aliens again.
They wanted more of the same. Yeah, they clearly wanted more of the same. Which it was never going to be. I mean, it was never going to be. I mean, you've seen the making of documentaries of this film.
Yeah. What's fascinating is how that never seemed to be on the table. I suppose they did ask James Cameron to come back and do number 3, and he said no because he was making whatever he was making at the time.
Whatever it was, yeah.
Yeah. So what's remarkable really is how open this massive studio was with one of their biggest properties to just doing sort of batshit weird, crazy stuff, to just let them veer right off. Because they got Vincent Ward to put together this. I mean, 3 went through loads and loads of versions. Loads of people.
I have never known a film to be so different from its original conception.
Yeah. Yeah.
and yet there's still DNA there, isn't there? There's still like thematic DNA there.
Very much so. And I mean, it's normally a recipe for complete disaster.
Yeah.
The Mummy 2017 has this written all over it. Right. It's one of the worst movies ever made, and it just has this is an unholy hybrid of 17 different versions.
Yeah.
Written all over it.
Did you ever see that? I don't know what year it came out, but I think it was in the 2000s. That version of the Wolfman that had Benicio del Toro in it.
I quite like that.
Yeah, that kind of has the same thing going on. You can see like the stamps of about 10 different directors in it. At times it's this very sort of almost polite Victorian drama. Then it becomes this CG-laden sort of action horror film in the vein of like Van Helsing. Then it tries to be this dense, almost like a psychological horror. Then it tries to be body horror. You can actually almost see the frames that were conceived or shot by different directors as they were piecing it together.
Yeah.
You know?
And by far the most interesting strain is the family drama, the theme
absolutely.
about sort of cyclical, repeating, legacy family abuse.
Yeah,
psychological abuse.
It loses me when it becomes like the CG fest, when it just becomes that's when it loses me. But when it's Benicio, just acting, I'm with it. I'm with it all the way,
Yeah, sure. And Tony Hopkins being
phoning it in.
Phoning it in, but also playing this really monstrous character.
Oh yeah, he's repulsive, isn't he? I mean, he is just utterly nihilistic, repulsive. Although you don't notice at the beginning.
As I say, I really like that movie for all its faults and its problems. I actually really like it, but I know what you mean. It does have that hybrid feel to it,
like a Frankensteinian patchwork thing. Almost,
it's appropriately gothic in a way.
Ironically,
yeah. But when this happens to movies, it's usually a disaster. But I find, it's written all over Alien 3. Alien 3 does have this. This is an amalgam of 14 different versions thing written on it.
It's got
really
this
does.
like this odd, ropey, slightly art house aesthetic going on, I find, which bizarrely I think works for it.
Well, it just seems to work somehow.
Yeah.
And this is what fascinates me, because it starts off, I think once they realize they can't get James Cameron back to make like Aliens or whatever it would have been called.
More aliens.
they say, right, well, what do we do instead? And for some reason, somehow, 20th Century Fox says, let's get this really cerebral, surrealist art house film director and see what he does. And he says, oh, let's have it on a wooden planet that's like a
Right.
monastery.
Right.
And yeah, it's
Like
a great.
when he talks about it, the original conception in the making of documentaries, he talks about the first shots that you were going to have, which were going to be, it was designed to trick you into thinking that it's set on Earth. So you're going to have blue skies, which you've never seen in the Alien films before. You've
No.
never seen that. You're going to have cornfields, and you're going to have these monks like overlooking the corn, and a shooting star, a comet, falls, and it's of course the escape pod with Ripley, Newt, and Hicks in it. So just from the get-go, aesthetically, in terms of atmosphere, it was going to be something that people had never seen before in an Alien film.
Absolutely. And to be honest, I'm kind of glad that it didn't actually happen, because Vincent Ward is a guy with better ideas than he has actual filmmaking chops.
Yeah.
Like his ideas are often really potentially interesting. And then when you look at the actual thing, there's a movie he does with Robin Williams, which is The Afterlife. Robin Williams dies, and we basically get like this Dantean trip through the afterlife.
Oh, What
with
Dreams
Robin
May
Williams.
Come?
That's it.
What Dreams May Come, yeah.
And on paper, it sounds amazing. And there are sequences where you can see, like, I think it's been a long time since I saw it, but he visits other people who've died, and they've created their own afterlives.
That's
one
right.
of them was a painter. I think it's his wife or his daughter or something. So he's walking through this environment that is essentially like a living three-dimensional painting. Now, on paper, you think, yeah, that sounds amazing. I want to see this. And then you watch the actual film and it's just sort of saccharine garbage, to be honest.
It never comes together. There's some great concepts in it, really good concepts, and some wonderful images. The film contains some beautiful images. It's supposed to be like a meditation on loss, because it's his wife who dies. She suffered, I can't remember what I think it's like a cancer or something to that effect. And he sort of goes after her, into the afterlife, trying to bring her back.
So it's more Orpheus and Eurydice.
It's Orpheus and Eurydice. It is absolutely Orpheus and Eurydice with elements of Dante and other sort of mythologies sort of thrown in, but it never quite coalesces. It never quite gets there somehow.
And this is why I strongly suspect that Alien 3, Vincent Ward's Alien 3 would not have been the movie. Well, obviously it wouldn't have been the movie that we have. And clearly, as I say, the movie that we have is a movie that I love. It's it's very dear to me. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I wouldn't say it's one of the best movies of all time, but for me personally, it's one of my favorites. And I doubt Vincent Ward's version would have been, because I haven't really liked anything else of Vincent Ward's I've ever seen. So, and yet you do get lots of stuff from this original concept. Like, I strongly suspect that a big part of it is Sigourney Weaver being really into the idea of an alien movie without guns.
Yeah.
Right? Because one of the things about the Ward treatment is that there's no guns in it, because it's basically the alien it's a colony, but it's a feudal society. It's like Hard to Be a God, the Strugatsky brothers thing, if you know that, where it's like an alien planet that's been settled by human spacefaring colonists, but it's because they don't have technology. These colonists have basically just recreated a feudal society.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like that. It's feudal punk, which is a very rare inflection of science fiction. Which is, I mean, I have thoughts about that. I don't know if you want to get into that, why that is, but yeah, it does. You get it here and there. Strugatsky's Hard to Be a God's probably the greatest example of it. But yeah, it was going to be feudal punk, and one of the things about that was that they didn't have machines,
right?
So they didn't have guns. And I think Weaver, she was really into that. She was really into the idea of going from this movie that was like, guns blazing, marine battles and shit like that, to a movie where there's no guns at all.
Right.
And that's it. It seems to have been her clout and her insistence that has has caused that to just be the common thread that goes through it as it develops.
So there is in the finished product still some fidelity to this original vision. So what's happened is the sort of Luddite monks have morphed into the prisoners. The monastery has morphed into a prison colony, effectively.
Yeah.
And the religious elements are now actually much more interesting than they would have been before. Much more interesting. It allows for much more interesting characters. So rather than having monks wandering around, you've got characters like Dylan, for example. Dylan, for me, is one of the most fascinating characters in this entire thing because he is effectively the Hicks of this movie. You know, he's the character that you're supposed to... He's the ally. You know, he is the ally character to Sigourney almost all the way through. And yet he has that wonderful line, "You don't want to be my friend. I am a murderer and rapist of women."
Yeah.
That is an incredible tension. It's an incredible tension, and there isn't anything in any of the other Alien films that plays with that.
No, it's incredible. And then her reply, "I must make you nervous then."
Right. And it's like, what? I mean, Ripley in this is Ripley's film. This is where she is not the action hero. She's not just like the cipher for events. She's not just the survivor, which, you know, she is in the first film, of course. She's actually a character here for the first time.
Absolutely. When I think of Ripley, well, this is kind of complicated because I kind of think of all the movies as existing in separate continuities.
I think that's fair, actually. And that's a good way to view it.
Yeah, which is why I'm able to quite like Prometheus, because if I had to accept Prometheus as being part of the same continuity as Alien, or not have anything to do with it, then I would do the latter. I would just say, right, fuck this, because the idea that these gigantic Lovecraftian leviathans inside the derelict spaceship that we see in the first movie. The idea that they sort of take their helmets off and there's these blue guys underneath.
I hated it.
You.
I hated it so much.
Yeah, no.
I hated it so much. I can't tell you.
It's so bad. But if you do this sort of mental trick that I do, where I kind of say, right, it looks like Alien. It looks like some of the sets and stuff, but it's actually a completely different story. Then I'm able to watch Prometheus and find it quite interesting.
I've got it. For me, it's a weird thing. I love to hate Prometheus. I really do. It's a bone I could gnaw on forever and ever and ever. You know what? It's a beautiful film. Like aesthetically, it's really beautiful. That's something I can't take away from it. There are moments in it that are amazing. I mean, there are moments, individual, isolated moments and concepts and images that are superb. I still can't get over that it's a story that only exists because the characters are the stupidest people who've ever existed. And people you would never, ever trust with, like, the most expensive and significant human endeavor in all of history. Definitely not.
Yeah.
The only character I really like in it is the bad guy. I mean, David is awesome, but that might be because it's Michael Fassbender.
Well, yeah, it's not fair, is it? It's cheating.
No.
Again, it's a huge sub issue. Let's not get into it. But
let's not, because Prometheus I could go forever. I really could.
I do find Prometheus interesting in some ways. I think it's got some interesting stuff to say here and there, despite the fact that large chunks of it are fucking stupid.
Yes.
And I absolutely refuse to acknowledge that it has any continuity connection with Alien, because Alien is, as I say, a work of art that is enormously important to me.
Well, I find, like, conceptually, it's kind of stunted there. The notion of trying to explore the origins of the alien defeats the core tension. The original film is called Alien because exactly that.
Yeah.
You don't know where it comes from. You don't know what its origins are. It is, by its very nature, this thing that defeats or refutes our entire conception of what biology is. It's this weird sort of biomechanical thing that reproduces in a way that we can't conceive of, you know? You take away that when you try to explain it all.
Yeah. No, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
Have you seen Covenant, by the way?
The bit. Sorry, seen what?
Covenant, the other Prometheus film, the follow-up to Prometheus.
Yeah.
where it actually does explain where the xenomorph comes from, like completely,
Yeah.
explicitly. The xenomorph is this. It's like, yeah, well done. There you
Right.
go.
Yeah.
Murdered the core tension of the original film. Well done.
And it's so weird, that movie, because it constantly sort of visually and aesthetically echoes the first film.
Yep. Yep.
It has musical cues in common. It uses similar graphic design. It
Hmm.
mirrors shots and things like. And I'm watching it, and I've only seen it once. I went to see it at the movies, and I was just absolutely baffled.
Yeah.
How can you be so fetishistic of a particular work of art to the point where you are consciously mimicking it in an attempt to scrape off some patina of its cachet,
Right.
and at the same time be so utterly dunderheadedly ignorant about what it is about that work of art that
Yeah.
makes it special. Like it's not, I think it's an incredibly complex work of art,
Yeah.
but it's not complex to understand why it affects us the way it does.
Hmm.
It affects us the way it does because it hooks into that feeling of awe
Yeah.
at at mystery,
Yeah, exactly. At the alien, at
at
that
the
which is,
inexplicable.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
Hence,
yeah,
like the multi-layered nature of the title.
yeah.
But
But
Covenant demonstrates just this, like, it only understands the aesthetics and the technicals. That's all it
yeah,
understands. It doesn't understand, like, the deeper resonance of the story or of the imagery or whatever. And also, it's boring.
it is. It's
I
incredible. I can't remember anything that happens in it.
Right. I mean, that's something you cannot aim at Prometheus. Prometheus is not boring in any which way. It is never boring.
No, I remember that. I've seen Prometheus twice, and I remember the plot in fair bit of detail.
Yeah.
Covenant, as I say, I saw it once, but I couldn't tell you. Like, I remember there's one bit, like, part of the plot hinges on somebody quoting a poem and saying it's Byron and it's actually Shelley, which
Right.
I'm an English graduate, so that stuck in my head. Apart from that, I don't remember a fucking thing.
The only thing I can clearly remember is the ignominious way they get rid of Elizabeth Shaw's character in between films.
Oh yeah, yeah, just yeah,
She just turns up as a corpse in Covenant, and it's like,
yeah.
oh wow, God, they wow, that
Well,
is like,
she's not big anymore, is she?
no,
Catherine Waterston's big now because
right,
she's in the latest Wizard movie, so we need
right,
her. I mean, Catherine Waterston's great, but that's the logic. That's why we
yeah.
have a new character, because we want this new person who's big now because she's in the
Yeah.
Wizard movie.
And also, people just didn't respond well to the Elizabeth Shaw character in Prometheus,
Yeah,
which I can
yeah,
see why. I mean, I love Noomi Rapace. I think Noomi Rapace is fantastic, but that character is just wow,
yeah,
arcless.
yeah, yeah.
Starts out one way, ends the same way, despite experiencing all manner of traumas all the way through.
This is it. Everything she goes through and everything she learns, it just kind of bounces off her, doesn't
Right.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
including possibly one of the most traumatic things anyone can ever experience.
Well, yeah, I mean, not to put too far. I mean, yeah, I mean, the actual physical thing that happens to her is horrific enough. But when you actually think about how it came about to happen, it's her husband who kind of effectively rapes her with a roofie or something. He
Right.
puts the
It's like
organism into her food or her drink, doesn't he?
it's
And thus
like
impregnates her against her will with a sort of alien Mickey Finn DNA Mickey Finn thing, and it's just. How atrocious what atrocious things can you come up with to depict and just not address them at all?
I mean, beyond that, I just love the fact that after like the birth, as it were, and after being stapled shut by that
Yeah,
machine, which is hilarious, by the way.
it is. It's so awful it just becomes funny.
It
Yeah.
is funny. It is that part when the staples are going, and that made me howl.
People in the cinema were laughing the first time I saw it.
Yeah, I could sort of see why. Then she's running around, like
Yeah.
running around these ships and things, and it's like, no.
No, yeah.
You've just
You
had
extremely are not doing that.
right. You've just had half your womb yanked out in the most incredibly abattoirish way. That machine is not very good at what it does.
No, it's comically bad at what it does, doesn't it? Like, I wouldn't let that thing burst a spot on my arse.
Right.
It It reminds me of that bit in Red Dwarf where Rimmer's trying to get the Scutters to take Lister's temperature, and it pokes him in the eye.
Yeah, and that's kind of the irony, isn't it? I mean, like, this thing is supposed to be so advanced, this ship, and yet, I'm very conscious of the fact that we're talking about Prometheus. But yeah, wow, Prometheus. But no, Alien 3. Let's.
Yeah. How did we get here? Let me see if I can.
I don't know. Let's see if we can drag it back. I tell you, one of the things I love about this film more than anything is the cast.
It's amazing.
Like cross section of British actors.
Yeah.
Who are just all of that. It does this wonderful thing that the very best of the Alien films does. Aliens does it as well, where you've got characters where there's no preamble about them. There's very rarely any backstory about them. I think only like Charles Dance's character has any like explicit background detail, and even that is very well delivered. You just know who they are by how they talk and how they operate.
Yeah, and there's so much subtlety in performances.
Yeah.
I mean, it's some of my favorite actors, Brian Glover,
I love him so much in this film. Brian Glover is incredible. Brian
Glover having an argument with Sigourney Weaver. I mean, what the fuck?
Wow. Every scene he's in, he's so legitimate feeling. There's something about the way he gives performance where he feels like what he is. He feels like the warden of this shitty, run-down prison colony. And he could be from any era. He doesn't have to be in like a science fiction futurist piece of work. He could be from any era. He is that embittered, run-down guy who clearly doesn't like where he is or what he's doing, but just feels as though he's got to keep doing it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love him so much. And also the way he delivers lines is fantastic. But this is rumor control. His soliloquy is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
It's a rare opportunity for Brian Glover to play somebody who's actually, I think, meant to be a bit posh.
Yeah.
He's like, I mean, obviously he's still Yorkshire, but he's like posh Yorkshire, isn't he? He's doing somebody who's from an upper social bracket in that sort of part of the world. And Brian Glover, bless him, I mean, he's had a great career, but he's spent it kind of playing gormless locals in All Creatures Great and Small.
Bit
stuff
parts
like that.
in Bottom and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh wow, yeah.
Which is another great performance of his, by the way.
Mr. Rottweiler.
he's a nice enough man, apparently.
Oh, I love that.
Oh man.
Yeah, there's so many guys. Paul McGann, Ralph Brown.
What the hell? I can't.
Paul McGann's amazing in this.
Right.
Especially in the long version.
Yes.
Where you get the full version of the character.
That is something that I really have to emphasize. The theatrical cut is great. I really love the theatrical cut. It's a really good film.
It works fine.
The director's cut is fantastic.
Yeah, it's. I don't think it's even like seriously. I must apologize, by the way, for all the squeaking and squealing in the background.
Fine. Those are your kittens, yeah?
Yeah, I'm fostering some kittens at the moment, and for complicated reasons, they have to be in here. You're hearing so lots of alien noises.
Yeah, I was going to say it's appropriate in an odd kind of way.
But it's not quite a director's cut, because I don't think David Fincher wanted anything to do with this ever again, did he? He basically just
it was his first experience, wasn't it, of like a big film, and I imagine, I mean, he was only, how old was he? He was not old when he got this project, was he? He was a young man.
Yeah, he's 30 something, 32 or something like that.
God almighty, I can't even imagine that. But like, he must have been, I mean, can you imagine being 32 and getting the next Alien film? He must have been dancing on the ceiling. And by all accounts, it was, and everybody who's ever been interviewed about it says this, it was apparently a nightmarish shoot.
Oh, yeah. No, it was awful. Again, the influence of Weaver looms large, because I think Weaver was very enthusiastic about David Fincher. They kind of had meetings, and he impressed her with his ideas. And so I think her support for him was a big part of, firstly, why he got the gig in the first place, and secondly, why he wasn't taken off it.
Yeah.
Whatever problems you have with David Fincher, I think you have to sympathize with him on this, because
totally.
he really was undermined by the studios. They didn't give him enough time. They didn't give him enough money. money. They interfered constantly.
By all accounts, they were having situations whereby they would be producing like the most expensive special effects and sets, and they would be on set. They would be blocking the scene. The actors would be there and ready to go, and you'd be getting some suit coming in. Oh, we're not doing this anymore. We want to do this. We want this.
And that's undermining. I mean, apart from anything else, apart from delays and stuff like that, it's undermining the director in front of the crew and the cast.
My God.
Yeah.
It's a surprise that he went on to make anything else, really, isn't it? All things considered.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's had a good career subsequently, and I think that's pretty lucky, because this could have ended his career before it started.
The vast majority of like young directors, it probably would have. I mean, it's if only, not simply because of any kind of reputation from the film, but simply because it must have been hellish. It must have been hideous. He must have aged like another 30 years whilst filming this damn thing.
Yeah. It's just weird. I think, I mean, it did make money. It wasn't the hit that they hoped it would be, but it wasn't a bomb either. So
no,
that's
it wasn't.
I
mean, the Alien films, when this came out, still had enormous clout.
Oh yeah,
like enormous clout. I was too young to go and see this. Obviously, I was only a kid when this came out.
I was just old enough. I was like 16 or something, so they let me in.
But I do recall, though, my mum going to see it. I do recall that because we used to love watching the Aliens films on VHS, and I do recall enthusiastically asking her when she came home what it was like and what was going on, and being enthralled by what she was telling me.
Yeah. Well, I came out of the cinema in tears, to be honest with you. It moved me profoundly, and I thought it was beautiful at the time. And the first film is just in a different category to everything else that follows it. The first film is, as I say, it's just completely apart.
Yeah.
The second film I now have very complicated feelings about, and I'm quite hostile to it in many ways. Like I don't really watch it anymore. I very rarely like sit and watch them 1, 2, 3. I'll watch the first one and then I'll watch the third one and then I don't
skip
bother.
right over.
Yeah. But the third, as I say, it's one of my favorite movies, and I suppose part of it is that I saw it when I was 16 and stuff. Because that's huge.
So you have of course, like an association with the film.
But it's this weird sort of double attitude the studio had to it, where they were prepared to take all these risks with it, hire this first-time director because he's made prestigious music videos and because the star is into him, go with these quite esoteric and weird ideas instead of just doing what would have been the financially safe thing and doing another action movie.
Right, just recreating Aliens somehow. Yeah, that would have been the safe thing to do.
Yeah, the obvious thing to do would have been like, oh, James Cameron won't come back. Okay, so get on the phone to John McTiernan or Rennie Harlin or whoever, at that time, and get him to do Alien 3 as, bang, bang, crash, crash. Yeah, but they don't do that. They go with this weird approach. And yet at the same time, they're so terrified of losing money that they're constantly undermining the thing that they've decided to go with.
Right, and if they'd have just let it flow, who knows what would have come out? Who knows? It would have been something entirely of its own, and it is. I mean, the original visions are so strong, and there's still some patina of magic going on here that flows through, despite all of the interference, despite all of the problems that it faced, that has resulted in something fascinating. That's, like, atmospherically alone, they're absolutely fascinating. It's most commonly compared to Alien. Because it has a sort of similar aesthetic going on, because it has a lot of sort of tight corridors, in fact, it even recreates certain elements of Alien, either intentionally or by accident. But I find that it is a very different beastie.
Very different. And this is why I think you could watch this film just completely on its own. Like if you had no knowledge that this was part of a series, and you somehow failed to notice that it was called Alien 3. There would be moments when you sort of said, is this a sequel or something? But for the most part, you could watch this just as a completely standalone thing. And it'd work fine. But yeah, they do go. One of the most iconic things they decide to do is to, because of course James Cameron, like the Philistine dunderhead he is, he changes the alien design and gives them like these like an exoskeleton on their heads or
Mm-hmm.
something. So they've kind of got these, completely fucking up H.R. Giger's design.
Mm-hmm.
This goes back to H.R. Giger's design. Because it has this smooth domed head, and yet at the same time, I mean, they brought Giger back to an extent, but it's not really him doing this. It's other people whose names I can't remember. But the alien in this, it's amazing.
It's beautiful, isn't it? It's a different creature. I mean,
It
even Ripley.
is.
I mean, they give Ripley that line where she says, "I've never seen one like this before. It
Yeah,
moves differently," and it
yeah.
solidifies this notion that the alien takes on the DNA of whatever its host is.
Well, this is it, because the second film kind of christens them xenomorphs,
Hmm.
and accidentally. I mean, it's one of the things that the second film accidentally gets right,
Yeah, right.
because Xeno kind of means alien, different, etc., and morph means change.
Right.
Well, it's the perfect name for them, because that's what they do.
Yep.
They change into. It's not just that they're alien to you. It's that they change into the things that are alien to them.
Right.
They're like the ultimate universal adapter. That's the terrifying thing about them. It's not actually ultimately that they're alien. It's that they're alien and they're compatible.
Yeah.
They can sort of mate with and assimilate anything and take on part of its shape. And you start to think, well, the thing we see in the first movie is that creature itself. Is that just what that species looks like, or are we just looking at one iteration of it there, which is conditioned by the fact that it's born from a fusion with these Lovecraftian leviathans that are on the derelict ship?
Right.
And so, because in the third film, it's born. Well, in the theatrical version, it's born from a dog.
Yes.
In the long version, it's born from an ox.
Yes, it's like a cattle creature, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of the sadly one of the moments where the long version isn't quite up to scratch, because the effect shot where it's born isn't very good.
Isn't as great, though.
No.
That said, the sequence where it's born is amazing.
The sequence is amazing, because it's intercut with the funeral of. I mean, this is a huge topic as well. It's Hicks and
Newton Hicks, yeah.
Yeah, and it's intercut with this speech that Dylan's making.
It's this Thanatos. It's this thanatic element combined with birth. This horrific birth. It's just amazing stuff, you know?
Yeah, it is. It's like, and the alien kind of becomes this personification of the universal fact that all life is ultimately born from death.
Right. This is something that feeds through this entire film. There is this incredible visual shorthand of metaphysics, which derives from the original script. Obviously, the alien isn't just an alien in this film. It seems to be some sort of principle or avatar, you know?
Yeah.
It operates with reference to the religious beliefs that occur on this colony. Have you noticed that characters tend to die when they make peace with themselves in this film?
Yeah.
The alien comes for them when they make peace with themselves. So take Charles Dance's character, for example. He is a fantastic character. And casting Charles Dance was the most brilliant thing ever, because he always plays villains. He always plays villains. So you see Charles Dance and you think, he's a bit shady, you know? And he does have this wonderful ambiguity. Almost all the way through, you don't quite know what level he's on until his confession, until you learn who he is and what happened to him and why he is on this colony. And then he's forgiven. He's forgiven by Ripley, who is this almost like immaculate mother figure, this Madonna, right? And then the alien comes for him.
That's right.
Because he transcends, you know, he's confessed, he's unburdened himself for the first time, by his own admission, for the first time in many, 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 possibly ever, you know?
It's probably the first time he's ever had this conversation with anybody.
And then he moves on to another plane of existence, and the alien is the means by which that happens. It's incredible stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's, as I say, the alien's birth, the intercutting with the speech gives you this idea that what the alien is a personification of like this universal principle that all life comes from death. It's not just, every living thing is born from decay and mold and soil that is made of dead bodies and bones, and we are all predators. We all eat life. Every living thing eats life. I've just finished reading Dan Simmons' book, The Terror, that the television series is based upon.
We
And
know all about that on this channel.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you haven't read the book, I strongly recommend it, because in many ways it's a different story to the television.
It's horrific.
Show. Yeah,
the book's way worse. I mean, obviously
You've read the book,
there are certain things they couldn't get away with. They just couldn't portray them. The stuff in the book where they're like, the ships are so frozen they can't touch anything. Because if they touch things, their skin comes away.
Yeah, that's right. Their eyelids freeze closed and stuff like that.
Oh my god.
But in many ways the stories are different. Like the characters have different destinies and stuff like that. But if you've read it, then you know there's loads of stuff at the end about Inuit metaphysics, Inuit beliefs, and part of it is this principle that every living thing is an eater of souls.
Right.
Which, if we get into what that means in the context of the book, will be another huge digression.
That will be huge.
Yeah, it's so suggestive that you can sense the outlines if you're listening to this without having read the book. You can sense the outlines of what it means, particularly coming from like a hunter-gatherer society.
Yeah.
Now, the alien in this is an eater of souls, and it's like a personification of the fact that all living things, all souls, eat other souls.
Right.
And if it takes you when you are pure, then it's like the angel of death. It's like a merciful angel of death that says, you have purified yourself. I will now take you. Your time as an eater of souls has come to an end, and now I come to eat yours, and you can be at peace.
Right. And the fact that it's occurring here in this wasteland of contaminated souls,
Yeah,
it's absolutely stunning. There is this almost Dantean element to it, isn't there? It's almost like it's a level of limbo or hell or like a waiting place.
Yeah, there's even the line, isn't it, about Dylan calls it a place to wait.
A place
because
to
they're
wait,
waiting.
right.
They're waiting for the apocalypse.
Yeah, that's
This is
right.
a millenarian cult.
That's right. Yes, I never thought of that.
And this is that apocalypse, isn't it? Or at least it's the part of the apocalypse that this place sees.
Yeah.
Because there's this real sense that, I don't know, as I say, I look at the films as existing in separate universes, but if you want to, you can for a moment dip back into the idea that this is the third chapter of this story. And this is a place that you could infer the existence of places like this from the first two movies, where like the first movie is obviously we're looking at part of a supply chain in an industrial civilization that's interplanetary, and it's based upon freight and haulage and truckage and cargo, etc., etc. And
yeah, it's often referred to as truckers in space, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's very working class, which is another thing.
Very much so.
And of course, it's explicitly anti-capitalist. I mean, it
makes near bones about it.
Yeah, but and then the second movie, it's set mostly in the ruins of one of the places that's supposed to be great. It's supposed to be like, a new life awaits you in the off-world colony, and it's supposed to be the place where families go, and you can imagine the propaganda posters of like the nuclear family smiling as they look out onto the new world, etc. This is one of those wonderful new worlds in the process of being created, except that when we see it, we're looking at the ruins of that process.
Yeah, it's a failed utopia, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're getting more and more into this society, this interplanetary society. By the time we get to the third film, we've come to just the absolute arse end, just the pit, just the sewer. Everything else up to this has been implying the existence of.
Yeah.
These sorts of societies with their bright, shining, hopeful, terraformed colonies and their trade routes, etc. They can't exist without these places where the people who are just the people who the human waste who are generated by this system, they're just thrown into the garbage in these places.
Right, and that's explicit too, isn't it? Because it's not
Yeah.
just a prison, it's a lead works, right? This is a place where it's a place of industry. It's where the prisoners, it's even that has failed at this point. Nothing works anymore, you know? Nothing works anymore. But
it's a slave empire that's in the process of falling apart.
Yeah, that's it. And that is made explicit not only in what we're told and what we see, but also in other factors as well. There's even like the color palette of this film.
Yeah.
There is this sense of like dusk all the time. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Yeah.
All the time. The place is in a perpetual twilight.
And it's also, again, part of the thing that carries forward from Vincent Ward's original idea. We do certainly in the long version, we see people pushing ox across fields, pushing the plow across fields. This is kind of a feudal society.
Mm-hmm.
It exists. It's explicitly a theocracy,
mm-hmm.
Overseen by. It mirrors the structure of European medieval society, because the church is fundamentally the most important thing. There's kind of two poles of power. You can look upon Dylan as like the Pope and Andrews as the king. And the two power structures support each other and also struggle with each other. But very much in this version, the secular authorities, the structures of law and order are allowed to exercise authority by the theocracy.
Yes, they're certainly the lesser, aren't they?
Yeah.
Of the two prongs, they're the lesser.
There's this very real sense that, I mean, Brian Glover even puts it across with like nervous glances,
mm-hmm.
that Andrews is kind of in charge, quote unquote, because he's allowed to be by Dylan.
He's kind of the intermediary between the masses and the authority, isn't he? You know.
Well, Dylan doesn't want to bother with any of that shit. You know,
mm-hmm.
Andrews can take care of all the boring stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But don't encroach upon my authority, or the authority of God, as Dylan would think.
Dylan would absolutely have it. He is the voice of God, isn't he?
Yeah, and you see the guys pulling the plough and the ox pulling the plough, and this is fundamentally a feudal society that now exists in kind of the useless, entropic, hollowed-out remains of an industrial modern society that has come to its end and started to fall apart.
Yeah, it is absolutely stunning. There's so much going on underneath the surface of this film. That's what I find when I rewatch it now. Nothing can be taken literally. There's metaphor going on everywhere.
Yeah.
In everything that you see, it can be read like a painting or like a text. And that's true of the original Alien as well. It's not necessarily true of Aliens.
No.
Aliens is much more sort of... it's the popcorn film of the series, you know. It's the popcorn film of the first three films. Everything is more overt, you know. It happens in a more literal sense. Whereas this film, there's so many shades to what happens. Like, for example, the iconic sequence, which is after the alien has come for Charles Dance's character and has murdered him, and it corners Ripley under the table, and you have that wonderfully intimate moment.
Yeah.
Which has been building since the first film, really, with Ripley and the alien, where it doesn't kill her. It explicitly doesn't take her. Now, you can read that in any number of ways. You can read it on the narrative level, which is, of course, it doesn't kill her because she's a host for another alien. Fine,
mm-hmm.
cool. Or you can read it on the metaphorical level, which is it doesn't take her because she's not ready yet.
Yeah, she's not. I think it's wonderful precisely because it works on both levels.
Mm-hmm.
On just the level of plot mechanics, the alien can tell she's incubating one of its own kind, mm-hmm. so it leaves her alive, and that makes perfect sense, and the plot works great, and I love it. But it also has this other and it's all the better, of course, for not just being announced at you. We've talked about this before, this thing where people announce their themes at you, and this is what this means.
This
doing an
film
allegory over
just refuses to do it. It refuses to do it. It is everything we're talking about now. You have to infer yourself from the imagery, from what happens. You know, there is not one moment where the characters stand around talking about, oh, this is what's happening and why.
Yeah, no, it doesn't happen. The characters try to make sense of what's going on. They try to understand the deeper
mm-hmm.
meaning, particularly Golek.
Yeah.
Golic tries to interpret, and I think Dylan is very practical minded. He's not the kind of guy who's going to let his metaphysical speculations get in the way of doing what needs to be done on a
Clearly, we
practical
see
level.
that. We
But
definitely see that.
I think Dylan does feel, again, amazing performance from Charles Dutton. You get the sense that this is a man who knows he's caught up in events that mean something much bigger than their surface.
But again, it's subtle,
indicates.
isn't it?
Yeah.
There's never a sequence where he is ruminating upon the fact, where he's sat just ruminating upon the fact. It allows you to see it in the subtlest way in like the performance.
Yeah, absolutely. But Golic, a fascinating character who you really only understand as a character if you watch the long version.
Yeah.
He christens the creature the dragon.
The dragon, which is explicitly religious, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. And it's the end of the world. It's the apocalypse.
Yeah.
And Golic wants to be taken.
Yeah.
Golic is the one who figures out on some level that the creature will take you if you are at peace with who and what you are.
Yeah, which is fascinating, isn't it? Because he is portrayed, like, narratively, he is the lunatic character. He's the one who misinterprets what the alien is, when in actual fact, in thematic and metaphysical terms, he's the opposite. He's the one who actually sees the truth.
He's the one that gets what it actually is until the end when Ripley understands as well.
Ripley understands, yes. I mean, Ripley in this film, my God, the ringer they put her through.
Oh, it's incredible.
The torture. Really what this film is about is delivering Ripley into her darkest hour, isn't it? It's giving her every fear that she's imagined from the previous film. So you have the death of everything, of Newt, her surrogate daughter, of Hicks, her surrogate husband, from the very beginning. So it's already delivered her into the depths of despair. She has nothing left. She has nothing left. So suddenly, where is she? Who is she? She doesn't know. She doesn't have anything left at all other than this thing, which, as she says, has been in her life for longer than she can remember.
Yeah, and again, that only kind of makes sense metatextually, because from her personal experience of events, the first, second, and third films all take place in the space of a few weeks.
Right. Yeah, that's really fascinating, isn't it? So
it depends how long she's on Earth or on the space station after her hearing and before she goes off with the Marines in the second movie. But she's been there long enough to get a job working a loader and stuff like that. So let's say it's a couple of weeks, right? From the start of the first movie until her death at the end of the third one, it's 3 weeks.
Right. Not counting hypersleep, obviously.
From her experiential point of view.
Yeah.
It's a month at most.
Right. That is a fascinating thing, isn't it? Because she's aware in this film on some level of what is happening. Like, she seems to know from the very beginning there's going to be an alien somewhere.
Yeah.
In this story.
She's become metatextually. She's become kind of aware of the fact that she's in a text and she's aware of how it works.
And she's seeking it out, of course, because she forces Charles Dance's character to perform the autopsies, which is another horrific bloody scene, by the way.
Sigourney Weaver is amazing in this film.
Yeah.
You got to give her full props. Like, this is a very clever, thoughtful woman. She's very intellectual, Sigourney Weaver, very artistic.
Clearly, I mean, she clearly wants there to be some substance here.
She really does, and I don't know how she feels about this, but I hope she has come to. I mean, everybody was kind of disappointed with it in the end, I suppose, but I hope she's come to the point where she can see that this is kind of a success. Yeah, I think.
I hope so. I would sincerely hope so, because I think this is the film where Ripley is at her best, I feel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Beyond a shadow of a doubt. She is such an interesting character. Also, I mean, just on an aesthetic level, like the stuff she allows them to do to her in this film. I mean, she always looks terrible.
she insists upon it.
Yeah.
She's really into it. You know,
Yeah.
she's very quickly sold on the idea of shaving her hair for the role, and yeah, she throws herself into this.
Yeah.
And she takes it very seriously, and she completely sells it. This thing that, you know, many another actress who has sort of fallen sideways into being the star of a horror franchise, which is not, I don't think that was Sigourney Weaver's career intention, you know.
Probably not. Probably
it
not.
It just kind of happened. And many another actress or actor, for that matter, would just take the money, turn up, do the lines. She's really invested in this, and you can tell, and she gives an amazing performance.
Yeah, it is incredible.
And as you say, that this is the Ripley for me. You know,
Yeah.
I have a picture of Ripley on the wall, and it's Ripley from this film.
Yeah, this is where she's allowed to ultimately become what the series to this point wants her to be. You know, this is where she flowers. This is where she becomes something else, and I love that. She is this almost Madonna-like character. Which is ironic because she actually finds a degree of her fulfillment not in like virginity, which is like the Christianic prescription for characters like her, but actually in the opposite.
I love that she gets to have a sexual relationship, an explicitly sexual relationship that's completely voluntary,
right?
You know, and it's not a great romance or anything.
No,
it's done for pleasure and companionship and stuff like that, and friendship
and catharsis in this awful situation, and there's so much going on, and it does, again, the film doesn't belabor you with that. You just know that there's a lot of politics going on in that relationship, and yet you see next to nothing of it.
Well, they barely talk to each other about anything substantive, do they? That's, as you say, really the horrible trick is that just as they start actually talking to each other, he's taken away.
Yeah.
Because she won't confide in him.
That's it. Yeah.
But you feel like she's almost there because he's confided in her, but it's too late.
He's one step forward on the metaphysical journey. He is one step forward from her.
Yeah. Well, and he's less traumatized than her, so he's got less far to go, I think. But one of the things the fans hated, of course, was that it kills Hicks and Newt.
Right, and kills them kind of off screen. You know, there's no drama or fanfare about it. But I think not only does that work thematically, it's a very clear way of divorcing itself from the previous film. It's a statement, isn't it? You know, it's a way of saying this is not Aliens. This is not necessarily going to be a direct follow-on from Aliens. We are not following this story anymore.
Yeah. You've got the comics.
Right.
We know that you want the third film to be like one of the comics turned into a movie. You ain't getting that.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
It turns a necessity into a virtue because they need what they need, of course, is if they're going to tell that kind of story, they need Newt and Hicks to wake up and it's like 5 minutes after the end of Aliens, and for obvious reasons that's not going to happen. So what can they do, really, apart from kill them all?
Kill them. I mean, and it's a brutal thing to do. It really is, because, of course, what it does is it deliberately makes all of the struggles in Aliens, you know, the fact that Ripley goes back for Newt at the end of Aliens, you know, it kind of makes it impotent. It makes it worthless. And that is a brilliant thing to do, because that's the point of this film. It is at that point delivering Ripley into the very depths of abjection where there is nothing left.
Yeah.
So she's only got herself and the alien.
Yeah. It's telling her you can struggle and fight as much as you like. You're not fighting for a personally happy ending. That's not what's on the agenda. That's not what's going to happen. If you're going to continue fighting, it's got to be for something other than that.
Yeah, something more. Something that's almost indefinable and intangible. Something beyond yourself.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. The fact that she finds it here as well in this particular environment has a particular kind of poetry about it. This sort of post-industrial wasteland.
Yeah, filled with murderers and rapists.
Right.
Because the film makes no. And one thing I really hate about it is that it does this double Y chromosome thing, which is pseudo-scientific bollocks.
Garbage.
Yeah, but. It makes no bones about the fact that this is a bunch of And of course, she's even attacked at one point in the movie.
Yeah,
She's very, very nearly raped in the movie,
very
which
nearly
I have
raped.
mixed feelings about. I don't know how you can make this movie and not have that scene, but at the same time, I kind of wish it wasn't there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
At the same time, I mean, it obviously part of that scene is that it does something for Dylan, you know?
Yeah.
It makes him more of her ally. You know where he stands after that.
Yeah, even though it's kind of implied that his priority is less her safety than the spiritual purity of his flock.
Yeah, it's not a no. I mean, he makes it. That's another one of the wonderful ambiguities of that character. There is way more going on there than him simply being sympathetic towards her, because he's not.
He's not terribly, no.
He actually doesn't like women. He makes that very plain. He's a misogynist, you know. He doesn't like women, and he doesn't like women here. They're not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
She's a problematic element. He's saving his brothers. He's saving their souls.
Yeah. Yeah. But they do forge a connection.
Yeah, they do.
And I think it is. I don't think you can boil it down to anything simple. You can't put it in like. I think it's just that principle of opposition. You know, ultimately they are both the kind of people who just kick back at the world. You know, when the world tries to crush them, they don't let themselves be crushed. And it leads directly into just a scene that I love. You know, I love this scene where they're all gathered around and Ripley and Dylan are trying to talk them into helping them catch the beast. And they're all saying very reasonably,
yes,
why should we bother?
Why should we? Let's just run away.
Yeah. And Dylan makes what is essentially a moral political argument, which is, yeah, you could do that, but what you're doing then is cooperating with them.
Yeah.
The company.
Yeah.
And for all that these people are, the way they've rejected that society has been through horrible crimes. They are nonetheless people who refused to fit into that society, who refused to fit into that kind of harmonious beehive.
Right, and where no place was made for them, of course.
Yeah, so they ended up in this shithole.
Yeah.
Because they are literally considered to be human garbage. And Dylan just, there's this feeling like the alien is merging with the company, and that's what the company wants. The company wants to merge with the alien because they are both these forces of intrusion and insertion and assimilation, and they're both essentially imperialistic.
Yeah.
They are inserted. They aggressively control and conquer and assimilate and just destroy or control everything they come into contact with.
And in a similarly mindless way, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the purpose of the beast is specifically just to do what it does.
Yeah, which Ripley says at one point, doesn't she?
Exactly.
You do what you do.
Yeah, you kind of get that from Ash in the first film, but Ripley puts it even more succinctly in this when she says to it, just do what you do.
Yeah, it's that awful purity which Ash comments upon in the first film. There is something terribly pure about the alien, isn't there? I mean, it doesn't Ripley say that. It's in the second film, isn't it, where she says to Burke, you know, I don't know which species is worse. You don't see them fucking one another over.
Yeah, again, it's because it's James Cameron. It's a bit crude and obvious and on the surface.
But at the same time, you get a sense of it's that notion of the alien being this pure thing.
Yeah,
this awful and terrible purity.
There is a sense in which, as much as this film does this thing where it kind of merges the alien and the company so that they become aspects of each other. This desperately destructive, intrusive, conquering, imperialistic, assimilating force. There's still a sense in which the company is worse, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Because they, firstly, I mean, human beings should know better. Human beings can know better. Even, and this film does this explicitly, even the worst human beings.
Yeah, right.
Can do and know better. and the other thing is that the alien it has this purity. It has this essential purity to it that the company doesn't, because the alien is just doing what it does, whereas the company has all these other insane objectives.
Right, this is the other
Profit
thing.
and
What do they
control
want from it ultimately? Given that we know that this is the arse end of everything, you get the sense that whatever society, the company, and whatever that means at this point, the company, whatever it exists in, is probably failing too. What are they hoping to achieve with it?
Yeah, the company, it is explicitly a capitalist corporation, but it's all, with everything, and it's very explicitly anti-capitalist, this film series, to the extent that any text produced by a massive Hollywood film corporation can be.
Right.
But it's also, the company is just kind of human civilization itself, isn't it? Or at least the people that rule human hierarchical civilization, the top end of it. And there's a sense in which, as you say, this society is exhausted, and we see this finally in the third film. It's falling apart despite trying to set up all these lovely happy colonies and shipping stuff back and forth along trade routes. It's just come to the end. It's just puttering out. It's exhausted. It's entropic. It's falling apart. And like the criminals on Fury 161 are the ones who've realized that, and they're just waiting for the whole thing to end. And the company, i.e. that impulse towards civilization that's based upon domination and control and exploitation and imperialism, etc., that is saying no, we can still make this work. All we need to do is find the next thing. And the next thing that they've hit upon is the alien, because they see that as like them mirrored, their values mirrored, but even more powerful. So of course they think, we can turn this into a commodity, we can turn this into a weapon. What they don't realize, I mean, letting the company have it would be the worst thing you could possibly do to the company, because it would just destroy them. It would absolutely consume the company. You give them the alien, it would just consume. The trouble is, and this is where Ripley's ultimately becomes this incredible hero, is that it would take everybody else with it as well.
That's it. Yeah, if it were just the company, let them have it,
because the company has made itself the basis of human civilization. So if you let the company have it, the company will try to use it as a weapon and it'll destroy them. But in so doing, it'll bring down everything.
Yeah, it's almost like extinction made manifest in that regard, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like, climate change will end capitalism.
Right. It is very much an Ouroboros, isn't it? Which feeds into the serpent imagery, of course. It is the snake eating itself.
Yeah, and of course there's kind of some cod Christian iconography in there as well.
Absolutely there is. Absolutely
but
there is.
I don't feel like this film isn't kind of wearing that unconsciously. It's not presenting, as so many things do, it's not presenting you with pop Christian iconography and saying, the serpent in the garden, eh?
No. This is more like Blake.
Yeah.
This has got the element of a Blake poem about it.
Absolutely, there's something visionary and inexplicable about the mythology at work here.
Yeah, it's Christian, almost Gnosticism.
Yeah, very much so, because the Gnostics were all about the end of the world and forbidden knowledge and stuff like that.
Mystery.
And the universe being the creation of an evil god, and there being the good god that is kind of the one that creates meaning within this fundamentally evil, meaningless universe. That's very applicable to this film.
Very applicable to this film.
But to the extent that Christian ideas and terminology and iconography do appear in this, it's not like the film kind of showing you a snake in grass and going, aren't we clever?
No.
What it's doing is it's showing you people who are using that sort of beliefs to try to understand what's happening to them.
Yes, yeah, it's a filter more than anything. And it's occurring naturally. That's the point, isn't it? It's occurring naturally within the universe and within the narrative itself. It is not a synthetic lens that's been layered over. It's not the director or the creators saying, look, we're doing this. This is what's happening, and we need to do this just so you understand.
Yeah, here's an apple, here's a snake, aren't we clever? It's not doing that.
No, it's not doing that.
No.
It's not doing the Nolan thing.
Oh god. Yeah, no. Thankfully, it's the danger of this seems to have passed. But there was apparently a thing where Neil Blomkamp was going to make another Alien film.
Yes, I remember that was in development hell for years, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I kept seeing every so often. It was almost like it became a tradition. Every year, for a while, you would see something crop up.
Yeah, well, for a while it was going to be, because it's always something with Alien. It's a bit like Hellraiser. There's always something that's cooking.
There's always something going on.
but for a while it was going to be Neil Blomkamp, and it was going to be like Alien 3 Redux, where they were going to just ignore everything in Alien 3. It was going to be decanonized, and they were going to take it from the end of Aliens.
Right.
And firstly, I'm not a fan of Neil Blomkamp, and that's exactly what I would expect him to do. And fuck that, and I'm glad it's not happening.
Yeah, right. I mean, from what I understand, what's happening these days, there is some scuttlebutt about an Alien TV show.
Yeah.
Like a streaming service show or something. And if they're going to do it, that's probably the best way to do it, because there's still a lot to be explored in this mythology. I mean, there's so much they could do about Weyland-Yutani, and about one thing you never really see in most of the films is Earth.
No, because the fourth film does this very, like so many things in the fourth film, in principle, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But in practice, you just kind of...
Right.
The fourth film does this flex where at the very end, they do get back to Earth.
They do, and I love the reactions of the characters when they realise they're going back to Earth, which is, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, not that shithole. Yeah. Implying that it is the worst place in the universe for humanity to be.
Yeah, well, it does make me think, because... one of the big influences on Red Dwarf when it started was Alien.
Yeah, clearly.
And in the novels, in the Red Dwarf novels, we've just talked about the Red Dwarf novels on IDSG. We did a bonus episode about the Red Dwarf novels.
I haven't read them for years.
Yeah, no, me and Daniel and James Murphy, who of course has been on this show, we did a bonus episode for our backers. That's us talking about the Red Dwarf books. And one of the things in the second Red Dwarf book is that basically the human race decided to turn Earth into its collective garbage dump.
Yeah, I can sort of believe that.
Yeah. So you can imagine Red Dwarf and Alien almost happening in the same universe.
Almost interlacing, yeah. The inherent absurdity of Red Dwarf. I mean, you've even got that similar sort of anti-capitalist vibe going on.
Yeah, very much so. Certainly in the books and the first couple of seasons. Yeah. This film, I love this film.
Yeah,
so much.
I was shocked by my own reaction to it this time. As I said, I've always enjoyed it more than most people seem to. But this time round, I was in awe of it. I don't know quite what's changed, whether I'm just appreciating how it operates now.
Some films need a couple of decades on them.
Yeah.
Particularly with fans, because
yes,
this is where our incredibly long digression in the first part of this, where we talked for an hour and a half and we completely failed to even bring Alien 3 up at all. Mm-hmm. But we did talk about some of this with fans and fan expectations.
Yes.
And yeah, there was this huge weight. We talked about this a bit earlier. Huge weight of fan expectation and this huge fan disappointment because they wanted it to be something that it just wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think kind of the pressure of that has cleared and people are able to see the film for what it is now.
Yes, to appreciate it in and of itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a work.
What it is really quite an extraordinary piece of work. I mean, you couldn't do this now. No. It's very of its time. In some ways, it's quite dated. It's very 90s grimdark.
Very much so. Yeah.
Which
there's a lot of 90s grimdark shorthand in this. Lots of shots of chains and dripping things and pipes and things.
Well, yeah, you can very much tell this is being directed by a guy that's been directing music videos.
Very much so. Very much so. And I love it. I kind of love that element of it too, the sort of time capsule element of it.
Oh yeah, no, it makes me very nostalgic. But I'm not into 90s grimdark. I don't like it much.
Not a Spawn fan then.
No,
not a Todd McFarlane fan.
This has stuff going on that justifies it. That this isn't a nihilistic. This is ultimately a humanistic film,
right?
Because it is ultimately Ripley saying, this is worth dying for.
Well, all of the characters,
for everything that's wrong with us, with the human race and with human society, I can't just let this thing tear us to pieces.
Right. All of the characters, every single one of them, even the worst of them, has a redemption arc in this film. Every single one of them has a redemption arc.
Again, I love it because it's not even really a redemption arc, is it? Because the they don't become better people.
No, they don't. No. They don't become better people. They move on.
Yeah, there's a wonderful bit, I think it's only in the long version, where Ripley encounters some of the guys that attacked her earlier in the
Hmm.
film. When I can't remember exactly what it is, they're injured, or one of them is helping the other because he's dying, or something
Hmm.
like that. And there's just this moment, because she's helping them in this moment of extremity and fear and pain, and they accept her help. And there's just this look that passes between the three of them.
Hmm.
And this is dodgy ground, right? Because
Yeah,
we're talking about sexual assault and
of
stuff like that.
course.
I want to be very careful here what I say and what I don't say. But there is this film. This film allows us to see the humanity in really terrible people,
Yep.
and it doesn't even necessarily say, right, they learn something, and if they got out of this and went back to Earth, they'd be better people. They probably
No.
wouldn't. Like, Morse survives. I love that Morse, this
Of
horrible, shitty
all
little
the
fucker.
characters, the
Yeah,
most Weasley, horrible character of all of them is the
yeah,
one.
yeah.
And even he is taken away by the company, so God only knows what happens to him.
God knows, but I love everything about it. His last line, we just hear it echoing down this corridor as he's
Yeah.
taken away. Fuck you.
Yeah.
I love it. I look just that sort of primal defiance
Hmm.
on the part of the garbage, the refuse, la canaille,
Yeah.
just to authority. Just and as I say, I was 16 when I saw this,
Hmm.
and it's very 90s grimdark, and I was 16, etc., etc. So there's an extent to which it's kind of nostalgia and immaturity and stuff, but it works for me because
Yeah.
it has this primal charge,
Right.
and it's not about even these people, even these terrible people, murderers and rapists of women.
Hmm.
They look for meaning, and they find meaning, and they have brotherhood, and they
Hmm.
find courage and defiance, and they find even the possibility of solidarity with Ripley. We tolerate
Right.
even the intolerable, and she with
Right.
them. And it's just without it being sort of a cheap or saccharine or moralistic vision of redemption or anything like that.
Right.
It's just a statement of the fundamental worth of people, even shitty people,
Even
or just
terrible people. Yeah.
humanity as a whole, even with our shittiness built in. We, there is a core of value there,
Yeah.
that this annihilating, assimilating, dominating force that is the alien stroke company, it wants to completely take away. It wants to take the angels and the demons. It
Yeah.
wants to
Right.
take the freedom, and thus the freedom to do good and evil.
And wants to
Um,
purge everything of its poetry, everything
yeah,
of its metaphysics. That's what the company ultimately represents. It's like the death of metaphysics in this universe. There's
yeah,
no poetry in the
no.
company or what it would create.
No, again on TV you have the Borg at this point, which is
Hmm.
like this assimilating force, and that's what you have in this film. You have, as I say, the merging of the company and the alien as kind of these
Right.
assimilating forces, with the alien specifically in this film, something that biologically assimilates that which it kills to breed through, um, and so you have this force, this like cosmic, as you mentioned Thanatos earlier, this
Yeah.
cosmic force of assimilation and destruction that just, like, it's like this entropic wave that just wipes everything before it. And again, the Borg as well is another very timely. It's an expression of the same thing, and
Hmm.
I think without getting drawn into a huge byway, I think it ultimately tracks back to the fact that this is what we were talking about earlier. That moment of, they called it the end of history. That
Right.
moment when just Western neoliberal capitalism seems to have just completely won, and the neoliberal millennium was just going to stretch onwards and onwards, and sort of Euro-American capitalism, McDonald's and all that,
Hmm.
and Tony Blair and Bill Clinton, everything was just going to be assimilated into that. I
And
think
go
that's what,
on forever and
and
ever
just,
and ever.
yeah, that's right. And history was over, and it was just going to be McDonald's and Bill Clinton forever.
Oof.
Um, and I think that's ultimately what these very 90s depictions of assimilating forces are about. They're about
Yeah.
anxiety about that. And I love this film because it counters that, not with, as I say, not with a saccharine or moralistic or inspiring positive vision
Hmm.
where, no, good people will team up against that. No, this film says just people,
Yeah.
even the shitty ones, will resist
Yeah.
that reduction of everything to grey goo.
Yeah,
You
they
know?
will find something in themselves, something in their basic humanity that will unite them and make them more than that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Which is
love the
why
fact that it takes the worst and the most lost human beings, and it dares to say they're better
yeah,
than those systems.
yeah,
I
yeah.
really love that. It's a daring thing, it's a very
It
daring thing.
it is very daring to explicitly make this a group of rapists
Hmm.
and murderers. Yeah.
Yeah,
And in some ways, it's unpalatable. It can be hard to take, and I can
yeah,
understand why somebody watching this would be very uncomfortable with it. I
right.
am, but there is something of value there, I think, and just that wonderful sense where Dylan talks them round and Ripley talks them round to instead of scurrying away and fighting and letting the company come in and take it away. No, fuck that thing and
Right.
fuck them, and let's
Yeah.
fight it.
It's not even
And
about the alien or the company at that point, is it? It's about this almost collective primal scream. It's like, you know what? We are the lost children of civilization. We are the lost.
yeah,
Let's do something. Let's just make a mark,
yeah.
even if it is just this.
Yeah, it's like in the Molly Maguires, that line Sean Connery's character has about you make your noise.
Hmm.
And
Kind of
yeah,
almost reminds me of texts like Douglas Copeland, like Generation X, where you've got the lost children of history, the lost children of Generation X, just telling stories to one another.
very much so.
It has a
Yeah,
sort of similar thematic quality to it, and then you have the ultimate, the final sacrifice of Ripley, of course.
yeah, which is as you say, it is the alien kind of. It is the moment when she is able to let go.
Yeah.
Because she has come to that moment of realization. And there is one thing about the theatrical version that I prefer to the longer cut, funnily enough, which is that firstly, in order to make the longer scene work, the longer version has to fuck around with the music, which is
Yeah.
incredibly annoying.
Hmm.
And we have to talk about the music a little bit before we
Hmm.
close this up. But the other thing is that in the theatrical version, the alien actually does burst out of Ripley's
It
chest as she
does,
falls,
whereas
and
in the director's cut, it doesn't.
it doesn't. And in the really great thing is that in the theatrical version, it comes out and she holds it to her.
Yeah.
She holds it to her breast,
Hmm. Yeah.
and it's obviously she's doing that because she wants it to die with her, but it's also an embrace.
Yeah, right. It's an embrace of everything that terrifies and has previously terrified and disgusted her, of her nightmare, the ultimate fear, which
Yeah,
of course she has nightmares about in Aliens. This is the thing she fears the most, being impregnated with one of these things, and it comes to pass.
yeah. And more profoundly than that, which she's embracing to herself, I think the value of her own sacrifice, isn't she?
Hmm.
It's not so much the alien that she's embracing; she's embracing her lack of fear of it.
Yeah.
It's the moment when she can hold on to it.
Yeah, it's a profound moment, and it is presented and framed as though it's celebratory.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
whole
it absolutely is.
sequence
Yeah.
she's backlit by the burning lead, so there's like
Yeah.
an almost like saintly quality to
It's
her.
stunning. It is stunning.
You can
Um,
imagine her like cast in lead as like a saintly statue.
yeah, yeah. And then the fourth film fucks it all up. Never mind.
Yeah, yeah, my
But
God.
the scene on the gantry just before she jumps, that's
Hmm.
I find it almost unbearably moving every single time, and it's just the temptation. It's the
Right.
the, the bishop, whether he's an android or the android creator or
Hmm.
whatever the hell he is, it doesn't really matter. It's the satanic
He's
temptation, isn't it?
Mephistopheles, is what he
Yeah,
is. That's
yeah,
what he is, regardless of whatever else he is. He is the demon on the shoulder.
yeah, yeah. And he says to her, we can take it out. You don't have to do this. You don't have to die. You can come back to Earth. You can have your life. You can have
Yeah.
kids if you want them. He basically tells her you can have anything you want.
Everything you
And
want.
we're not going to use it as a weapon. We're going to destroy it. We understand how dangerous it is. And she knows it's bullshit.
Yeah.
But all she has to do is pretend that she doesn't know.
Hmm.
He's not trying to persuade her. What he's doing is he's giving her an excuse.
That's
He's
it.
saying, you can get away with this.
Yeah. It's okay. Nobody's going to tell. You know?
All you have to do, we pretend that we're telling you this, and you pretend to believe us, and then we got what we want, and you'll be all right, and it'll be fine. And just that moment when, because it's so seductive, and we all face that every day.
Yeah.
That moment when this world that is so fucked up and evil says to us, "No, it's fine.
It's all
fine.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
everything's okay.
Just go along. Just go along. You're not a bad person. Just and you just have to. It's exhausting because you just have every day. I mean, I'm not comparing what we do to jumping off a gantry into boiling lead, but it's exhausting because every day you have to say, no, this world, I don't accept this. I do not accept this. And just the moment when, in spite of everything, the almost irresistible temptation, she just looks at him and she says, no.
Yeah.
No. It's that word. It's just that moment. No.
Yeah.
It's just,
it's
amazing.
It's
iconic to me.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really beautiful. It culminates all of her entire struggle throughout the film. Like the religious imagery all culminates there.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful moment.
And it is. Without being belabored, it's Christ tempted by Satan.
Yep.
And all that. Mephistopheles tempting Faust.
Yeah.
Well, of course, Faust doesn't resist it.
Of course. There's an entirely other conversation to be had there. Because from were it more literal like it is in Faust, then I would have been fuck it, go for it. But no, in this instance, it's a really powerful thing that she does, because she defies the possibility of a kind of empty redemption. She could have had her life back.
Yeah.
I've no doubt the company could have given her another sort of cold and clinical existence somewhere, and probably would have, once it had gotten what it wanted, and she could have just gone on with her life, just as people do.
She could, she could spend the rest of her life saying, well, they told me they were going to destroy it, and I believed them, and they tricked me, knowing the whole time that wasn't true.
Yeah.
That she'd knowingly acquiesced to letting them have this thing that is just the negation of all life and meaning.
Yeah.
In human civilization, really, because that's what the film has built it up to.
Yeah.
It's built it up to the point where this unity of Alien and company is just it's this utter wasteland.
Yeah. She could potentially be the mother of all extinction, the mother of apocalypse, the whore of Babylon.
Yeah.
If she wanted to be. I mean, they even make it explicit. In that scene, another wonderful scene where she seeks out the part of her craft that still exists, and she performs a scan on herself to see if there's one inside of her. And she obviously sees that there is one inside of her. And she says it's a queen.
Yeah.
So this thing is... This is Bad News Bears. This is not just it's not even just a normal one of these things. It's a queen.
And it's repurposing the rather, I mean, to my mind, rather crass imagery of the Cameron movie, which reduces the aliens to insects and gives them a hive and a queen and shit like that, which endlessly annoys me. I hate that because they're not fucking insects.
Right.
But that's what he does, and it's left with that. But it takes the idea of the queen and it takes it out of that rather crass sort of beehive analogy and into the realms of the book of fucking Revelation.
Right. Yeah, it makes her like she could either be Christ or the Antichrist.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Wow.
It's amazing stuff. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, this is the kind of imagery I love. This is the kind of imagery I play with all the time in my fiction. And to find it here, where you would never have expected to find it.
Yeah. No, I mean, think about the third film in. Obviously, you've got stuff like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and where everybody has, been planning the third film as part of the whole from the start. That's not really applicable. But think about like the third Nightmare on Elm Street film, or the third Friday the 13th, or the third whatever. Nobody has any expectations of the third part.
The third Hellraiser.
Yeah.
which is a fun enough film, but
I quite enjoy that.
I think it's hilarious. It's shit, but it's hilarious fun.
Yeah.
But no, it's absolutely true. This is a breed apart. This for me stands alongside, in terms of the third films in horror franchises, it stands alongside The Exorcist 3 Legion.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah.
Which is a stunner of a film.
Yeah.
Stone
That is a
cold
really good
stunner.
film. Yeah, no,
But
I
you're
love that
right.
film.
What right do they have to be any good? You know?
Yeah, well, I really think we can put a lot of this down to Sigourney Weaver. I think her investment and her care about what she's doing, about making this something interesting, making it something worthwhile. I think that really did play a huge part in it.
She does seem to, whenever she comes to a role, she really wants to bring something to it. It seems to engage with it. She has to feel there's a reason for it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there has to be some poetry. There has to be some wider significance. It can't just be Ripley again, Ripley again, Ripley again, you know?
Yeah. Well, I feel like I have to mention the music.
Yeah.
Because Elliot Goldenthal's score for this, it's just incredible. This is an amazing musical score. It's one of my favorite musical scores of all time.
It's gorgeous to listen to in isolation.
It is. I listen to it
really lovely
all the time, in isolation, as you say. Yeah.
And it's interesting because it is actually quite divergent from the other Alien films.
Very. Yeah.
It does. I mean, Aliens has pretty much the same soundtrack as Alien. There are a few differences for obvious reasons, but by and large, it borrows all the themes and the leitmotifs and qualities of the first film. This is its own thing.
Very much so. Yeah, a lot of Jerry Goldsmith's original score for Alien is certainly like the opening music is it's very atonal and music concrete and stuff like that. But there's a lot of lyrical stuff in there as well. And yeah, James Horner bases, because again, Aliens visually echoes Alien a lot. Certainly in the initial scenes, and I think James Horner is. I think that's something that's very deliberate. It's probably something he was asked to do by James Cameron.
Almost certainly.
And it's a perfectly fine score for an action movie. Bits of it are gorgeous. So much so that James Horner reuses bits of it in loads of subsequent movie scores that he writes.
Yeah.
But it is ultimately just a nice action movie score.
Yeah, it's a very decent action movie score, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it does its job really well.
But with this one, again, it's this sort of it's so much better and so much effort, so much more effort and so much more care and so much more interest and so much more being put into the music here than would normally be expected.
Well, I think what the music demonstrates when you listen to it in isolation is that there is just more variation of mood going on here.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, that it has to be, doesn't it? Incredibly diverse in its approach because it has to reflect a movie that has all these different tones.
Right.
Yeah.
There are very rarely like celebratory moments, for example, in the previous Alien films. Whereas here, there definitely are. I mean, okay, it's often in very dark circumstances and couched in a kind of, as you say, sort of 1990s grimdark quality. But there are celebratory moments, like the death of Ripley, for example.
Or the music that accompanies the scene where Dylan and Ripley make their big inspirational speech.
Yeah.
But it's a wonderful score because it's incredibly lyrical and powerful.
It's a good writing score. If you want to sit down and write, it's great for that.
Yeah, no, I use it for that purpose myself, along with Elliot Goldenthal's score for Titus, which is another of my all-time favorite movies. Steve Bannon's involvement to one side.
Yeah.
But it's very unusual. It's very innovative. There's all sorts of postmodern touches, like the scissor noises and
right. It's an odd thing. It's a very strange soundtrack, and also it's a weird horror and science fiction soundtrack. It doesn't sound like either, really.
It doesn't really, does it? No.
It's not the kind of thing. If you listen to it in isolation, and if someone didn't know that it derives from an Alien film, they probably wouldn't work it out.
No, and a lot of Hollywood. I like movie soundtracks. I
Me
like good
too.
ones,
Me too.
but a lot of Hollywood, particularly Hollywood movie soundtracks, they're just interchangeable. Like
Yeah, yeah.
you could take the score for Patriot Games or whatever, and you could
Hmm.
use it on the back of I don't know, the latest Tom Cruise science fiction film or
Yep.
whatever. I struggle to think of another movie where you could use much of the music for this without
This is
the audience going, "What's happening? Why is
right.
this?"
The only thing I could think you could possibly do is take the soundtrack and write a film around it.
Yeah,
I don't think you
yeah,
could do it the other way around. It's just too specific
it is. Yeah,
and
yeah,
too much like too integrated into what this film is. And that for all of its problems, that's something this film does beautifully. All of its elements are integrated together and it works as a whole.
yeah. It really does. I mean, sort of circling back to where we started, I remember a lot of the reviews at the time were very snippy about the plotting.
Right.
A lot of the reviews were kind of, oh, the movie takes all this time setting up characters it doesn't need because it then just kills them off. And
Not realizing that that's kind of the point, you
that's
know.
kind of the whole point. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
Popular
think it's actually,
mainstream critics showing their asses,
as they do,
as they tend to do.
I think it's actually really well written. Like
Yeah, I
you,
do
you
too.
can you compare it to most equivalent movies that we were talking about Covenant earlier. Covenant's
Mhm.
just this random mess. I mean,
Right. You know what Covenant does for me? It does that Doctor Who thing where it's and then. It's
yeah,
and then storytelling. So it's like this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. It's
yeah,
written by someone who thinks that's how you tell a story, in the way that a child often tells a story, where it's very simple. And it
yeah,
is
absolutely.
just
Yeah.
plot. It's just this happens, then this happens. This film is not that.
No, this particularly in the long version, you can see this because it sets up this relationship between Golik and the other prisoners,
Hmm.
and Golik's relationship to Dylan, and Golik's very particular um, take on the religion that they all share.
Right. His
And it,
relationship to the alien itself, of course.
yeah, exactly, because you then get the scene where he's with two of the other prisoners and he's the only one that survives the attack.
Hmm.
And then that flows directly into him being blamed for the murders of the other prisoners by Andrews,
Hmm.
which stems directly into them. Um, Andrews is then killed by the alien while he's telling the other prisoners that Golik killed the
Right.
two he was out with.
He's denying its existence, of course, so
Yeah.
it has to demonstrate itself.
But by that point, Golik is locked up in the sick bay, which is where Clements and Ripley are.
Hmm.
You have that amazing conversation between Ripley and Golik.
Right.
That amazing line about Golik's talking about girls used to like me
Yeah.
for a while,
Right.
which is so fucking sinister
Yeah.
beyond. But Golik witnesses the attack by the beast in the sick bay,
Hmm.
which heightens his insane worship of the beast because his reaction to it isn't horror.
No.
He's delighted.
Yeah.
He's worshipping it when he sees it kill Clements, etc. Golik is then released later on by Morse,
Yeah.
and he then because this is by this point they've locked it away in
Yeah.
the nuclear waste thing, and he lets it back out again.
Yeah.
So I think that's amazing plotting.
Yeah, because it sounds the way when you describe it, it sounds like it's quite a long arc, doesn't it?
Well, it
It's
is. It
not.
unfolds
It's really
slowly,
not. It's so elegant the way it's portrayed.
and it happens in the background. Golik is
Right.
never foregrounded. He's
Nope.
just this presence in the background who's every now and again it cuts away to him and what he's doing, and you think, okay, it's him again.
Yeah.
What's he doing now? But it
What's the
turns out to be,
significance of him?
yeah, it turns out to be absolutely crucial
Yeah. Yeah.
because they
It's
get it trapped, and there's a particular. Thematically, it ties right into what we were talking about before, which is that
Mhm.
people are taken by the alien
Right.
when they reach some kind of understanding or peace.
Yes, and this
And
is
he,
what the critics are obviously missing.
yeah, yeah, and he basically offers himself to it. And the scene where he goes to where the creature is imprisoned. He kills the guy guarding it, and kind of has this thing
Oh,
where
it's
he says,
brilliant. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't
And then
it?
he opens the door and nothing happens. He just stands there looking into this
Yeah.
vast darkness.
Uh-huh.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's
Beautiful
really,
moment.
it's tightly plotted. It unfolds like clockwork. It puts the themes across, and it creates these incredibly, it gives Paul McGann the chance to act his socks off doing
Yeah.
this character, and it creates these incredibly sinister, freighted, laden scenes.
Yeah, but without any kind of laboriousness or preamble or
No,
anything like that.
no.
It's
And
elegant.
when you get to that point where Golic lets the creature back out again, there's this kind of sinking feeling after everything they went
Yeah.
through to get it in there. When you realize what's going to happen.
Yeah. It's almost like fate, isn't it? It's inevitable. You
Yeah.
can't contain this creature because it's not literal, you know. It defies being contained.
Well, it's almost like it engineered its own release
Yeah.
through Golic.
Yeah.
Like if you want to imagine this creature having some kind of consciousness or even empathic or telepathic connection to Golic, you can imagine it sitting in there in the darkness thinking, it's all right.
Mm-hmm.
My acolyte will be along in a minute.
Right. Right. Yes. And there is almost that implication, isn't there?
Yeah.
You could almost take it that way, which is in and of itself very frightening and very sinister because it's
Very
something we haven't
frightening.
seen
Yeah.
before.
No, that as I say, that scene where he's just standing in the doorway staring into the darkness,
Yeah.
it's very, hairs on the back of the neck. It's one of the few moments in the series that genuinely affects me that way.
Yeah.
Apart, beyond the scenes in the derelict in the first half of the first film.
Those are some of my favorite moments in the entire franchise, quite frankly. The
Yeah,
the gigabits.
Yeah, just in cinema, really, for
Yeah,
me.
it's beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. I've never seen anything quite like it, other than in the other Alien films since, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so strange, the legacy of the Alien movies, isn't it? Because again, it's something that could really only happen at that particular moment in culture.
Right.
This massive blockbuster hires this peculiar Swiss surrealist who does.
That was it, wasn't it? That was the decision that made this series what it is.
Oh, absolutely.
Because without his input, it would have been, I'm sure, a very well directed alien creature feature. But it would have just been a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
I mean, it kind of is a lot of
I
the
mean,
time.
it still is, yeah.
In the first film, there are, with the greatest respect and devotion to this movie, which, as I say, is just an integral part of my brain, there are sequences in the first movie where it is very man in a suit.
Towards the end. In fact, I like yourself, I adore that film. That's one of my favorite films in all creation, you know?
Yeah.
But there are mistakes in it, and one of the big mistakes is when it stops shooting the alien in these very obscurantist ways and shows you the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's a mistake. It's a mistake. They should never have done that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Particularly when it's outside the escape pod, sort of floating around.
Yeah, it's a shot I just dislike, and I don't know why they put it in.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's there, that shot.
Then Ridley Scott goes back and re-edits it in 2011 or whatever it was, and he leaves that in.
Leaves that shot in. Yeah, I know, right? It's like, oh, come on, man. Come on.
But this is what I want to get to. Another thing that people talk about Alien 3, I think we'll wrap up soon, but I just want to say,
of course.
People complain about the CGI. Now, yeah, this was
Fair
1992.
enough. Yeah.
CGI was rubbish.
What are you gonna do?
It's not good.
No, it isn't. It isn't good.
But it kind of is good. It's because what they're depicting, it's not depicted realistically.
No.
When you look at it, you can tell, oh, that's a CGI shot.
Very
the live
much
action shots of the alien are really good.
Mm-hmm.
The costume and model work are very good.
Yeah, the puppetry and whatnot, it's beautiful.
Really, really good. Bishop's not all that great, but the alien stuff's fantastic.
They do their best with Bishop.
Apparently on set that was known as Bosh Up. So
I could see why.
Yeah. But then you get the CGI in the last section, in the chase sequences, the CGI alien particularly. Obviously, as I say, it's not convincing. It's very 90s CGI.
Very
but
shiny.
At the same time,
looking.
I really do love it because I love the design of this alien. I love this leopard-like
Yeah, the quadrupedal alien.
quadruped, yeah, with the great big long tail.
Yeah,
This,
the
I mean,
neck
it's
that extends up, very
yeah,
different from what's
yeah.
gone before.
And that scene, there's a bit in the chase scene where one of the guys is, I think it's Pete Postlethwaite.
Mhm.
Again, Pete Postlethwaite's in this bloody.
Right. What?
He's
What the
running
hell?
down the corridor, and it comes after him, and it's the CGI version, and it's running along the ceiling,
Yeah,
and it just goes it just thrum,
yeah.
across the ceiling after him, and every single time that just makes me go.
hmm I will say this: the CG moments are used sparingly, and it's often in darkness, so you don't really see too much of it. And it often is intercut with POV shots from the alien's perspective.
Yeah, I'm not mad about them, I have to admit. I'm I'm not mad about the fisheye perspective
The
shot.
old Evil Dead thing. That's
Yeah,
what they're doing. It is literally a camera bolted to something, and someone running with it.
yeah, yeah. I'm not mad about that. But I do love the depiction of it. It's like the CGI is bad,
Mhm.
but what they're depicting,
The
the
design is
ideas,
good.
yeah, the design and the ideas they're depicting with the bad
hmm
CGI are breathtaking.
And you're right. It's
I,
1992. I mean, good God, this is pre-Jurassic Park.
it is, isn't it?
Um, you're not going to get the revolutionary steps in CG for a good long while yet.
But I don't know. I think I'm talked out now. So
Yeah, me too. All I can really say about this film is it's really beautiful.
it is.
I'm amazed by how good it is. I mean, even having seen it so many times, I don't know why seeing it again this time round has affected me so powerfully. But it has. It really has. I think it's a stunner. It's easily probably my second favorite of the Alien films. Alien will probably always be my favorite of them.
Yeah. No,
But
I feel the same. Alien is just in a different category of
yeah,
thing for me.
Alien is
But
a
then it's Alien 3,
Mhm.
and then very distantly all the others.
All the others, yeah. I mean, there's some of the others that I just don't even count, quite frankly. I mean, I can't abide
Well,
them, but
no, I mean I think I watched one of the Alien versus Predator
yeah,
movies, and it
yeah.
was all right, but I'm not interested.
The first one is not a terrible film. It's not
No,
a it's not
the
a
first
good
one
film.
the first one kind of does what Prometheus does, doesn't
Right.
it? Except in half the time.
It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it technically. The second Alien versus Predator is one of the there are three films that I've walked out of the cinema on, and that's one of them because it's inept. It's just like, it's just technically inept. It's bad. It's badly made.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, I've never seen it,
it's
and I won't
terrible.
bother.
It's not
Oh.
worth. It's not even like, so bad it's good. No, it's terrible. It is just arse-numbingly bad.
Is it Paul S. Anderson again made that?
No, actually, it's not. I can't remember. It's two brothers who
Oh,
were making sort of lots of sort of popcorn science fiction horror films around the time. I
right.
can't remember their names for the life of me, and after that, I doubt they ever got any work again, quite frankly, because it
Yeah,
is
yeah.
inept. It's just inept.
Because
Um,
the first Alien versus Predator is Paul S.
it's Paul
Anderson,
S.
isn't it? And
Anderson, yeah.
you can usually rely upon him to make enjoyable crap. Like
Right.
I love Event Horizon.
Who
It's shit, but I
doesn't?
love
Who doesn't love Event Horizon? It's great. It is just so much fun.
it.
And I love its earnestness in trying to freak you out with its imagery, and failing for the most part, failing. But it's just so much fun. It's got Sam Neill in it. I mean, anything with
Yeah, and
Sam Neill in it, it's fine.
Lawrence Fishburne, and
Right.
yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I'll
And
always
some
go for that.
genuinely great production design as well.
Yeah, I mean, like it's Hellraiser in space essentially, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that sort of drive chamber that looks like a load of razor blades. That's great. I
Right,
love
it's
that.
amazing, and it does have some genuinely creepy ideas and concepts. I love the notions in it. The concepts are great.
Yeah, you watch it, and there's two modes of watching it, isn't there? It's just sitting there and enjoying the fuck out of it
Mhm.
and giggling, and then every now and again you watch it and you think, about how you would need to change it if you wanted to make it into an actual good film.
Yeah, right. That's it. That is exactly it.
And like the first thing you would do is excise 2/3 of the dialogue.
Yeah. Oh, the dialogue. The dialogue is kind of what kills it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it still has moments that I find genuinely like affecting. Like some of the stuff that's done to the characters is repulsive.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yeah. The airlock
oh,
sequence.
stop it! Yes, don't even. I don't know. I know exactly what you mean. That's awful. Bleh. Yeah. There's certain concepts that really do it for me, and that is one of them. The notion of like pressure changes, like bursting organs, and no, sorry, I don't know why that gets me, but it does. It really does. Oh man. But no, Alien 3, what a film. I mean, all I would really say to the people listening to this is please go and watch it, or watch it again, you know? Watch it again and give it a chance, because I think it's a beautiful piece of work.
With an open mind.
Yeah.
Give it another go. And, I mean, personally, I'm delighted to see the last of Newt. But I know it's hard. You got attached. She was cute. I understand. But, she dies and it leads to incredible acting. You get to see.
She doesn't die in vain.
No, she doesn't. And that scene, just the interplay between Charles Dance and Sigourney Weaver, just with their eyes.
Oh, it's horrible, that scene.
It is horrible, but it's incredible. And again, the music, it's incredibly moving.
Yeah, oh no, it is a pivotal scene, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's beautiful.
And the little touch that she goes there to the morgue and she finds that somebody has put a little sprig of heather in the handle of Newt's drawer.
Right. It's it's brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant. But yeah, in order to, I mean, it sounds so pretentious, but in order to appreciate this film for what it is, you kind of need to watch it without your Aliens hat on. Yeah. It's not that. This is a film where you can't go away and do something else whilst you're watching it and appreciate it, because a lot of it is metaphorical, a lot of it is abstract. And that's I get, kind of how you need to watch it.
No, absolutely. I get being disappointed if you loved Aliens. I mean, these days I just straightforwardly don't like that movie. But if you do, that's fine. But you've got the comics.
Right. And I'm sure that, I have no doubt there'll be other Alien material around before much longer. There'll be something.
Yeah, because it's a cash cow and they have to milk it. Yeah.
Who knows? It might even be good. There might be something decent out of it. Who knows?
It might be, but I'm kind of at peace with just letting them do whatever they like, because I feel like Alien has just this. Alien is so distinct and individual and completely on its own that it just has this kind of shell around it that makes it untouchable.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want with the mythology or the canon or whatever, and the Alien is just this. It's just this untouched island all to itself.
Oh, it's a masterpiece. It really is.
Nothing touches it. Nothing touches it.
It's one of those once a year, every year films for me.
Yeah.
And every time I watch it, it gets me. Every single time it gets me. I find it frightening. I find it affecting. I find it arousing and brilliant and beautiful. It just does it for me on every level. It's as we discussed earlier, it's not a perfect film, but it's damn close.
It's
damn close,
It's got a serious structural flaw, which is that basically the chest burst scene, the birth of the alien, happens roughly halfway through, and the film is never as good as that again.
Right. Which is often the case, with a lot of these films. A lot of the, the first acts are the ones where it all happens.
Well, I feel like that's kind of the end of the for me. Like, they wake up, they go to the planet, Kane gets impregnated, they look at the derelict ship, they come back, everything seems to be fine, and then Cain gives birth to the alien.
Right.
To me, that's it. That's the story.
Well, that's the
And
high
rest,
point, isn't it?
yeah,
That's the crescendo of the story. And then after that, it kind of comes down because after that, you know what it is. It follows formula after that to a certain degree.
as much as I love lots of the stuff that follows, it just feels like epilogue to me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love all that shit. I love it.
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
great. I particularly love the Dallas moment where he's in the pipes and wow.
And the Ash stuff is amazing.
Yeah, the Ash stuff is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. My God, Alien. Wow. What a film.
Some things just get inside you.
They do. You know what? I think we should end it on that. I think we should end it on that because that is fantastic. Jack, thank you so much. I know we've been trying to do this for a while. Is there anything you would like to pimp out before we go?
Well, firstly, thanks for inviting me on. It's always fun, lovely to talk, and thanks for letting me waffle about this movie for so long.
My pleasure.
I'll always talk about this film.
Yeah. You could sort of do watching Alien 3 in the same way Kit does watching RoboCop.
I could, yeah, or The Shining is another one.
Oh, do you want to do an episode about that?
Or any opportunity to talk about that, I will talk about it. Yeah.
That might be an extended episode or a series of episodes, though, because it's.
If you want me, I'm down.
Yeah. How do you even begin with that one?
Well, I'm on record. There isn't any such thing as the greatest film ever made. It's an inherently silly concept. Even so, The Shining is the greatest film ever made.
The greatest film ever made. Yeah. It's hard to argue. It's a damn good piece of work, that one. My God. Again, any film that can freak you out just by saying Tuesday.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Brilliant. I mean, my God. Sorry, yes, you were saying. Is there anything that you want to pimp out?
Things to pimp out. Well, yes. I have my own podcast, which has been running very not periodically. That's not the word. What is the word? Infrequently now for a good while. It's called the Shabcast.
Mm-hmm.
And the most recent one, I think, is about. I talked to Christine Kelly, my friend, the writer Christine Kelly, who's really good. You should check out her stuff. And we talk about Alien and The Shining.
Brilliant.
So check out Shabcast 30, which is called Shelley Duvall Directed The Shining.
Awesome.
Because that's kind of our thesis statement. Also in the Shabcast, more recently, of course, is a series I'm doing with another friend of mine, Holly, where she explains Final Fantasy VII to me because I'm a complete computer game novice.
Fantastic.
The Shabcast has a big back catalogue of stuff. Also, more prominently these days, I'm the co-host of I Don't Speak German, which I make with my very good friend and comrade Daniel Harper. And that's it started out being about the far right and Nazis and people like that, because Daniel was listening to all their podcasts and studying them, and he was explaining them all to me. All those people that were at Unite the Right. And these days, what with the world being what it is, we've had to branch out. And these days we talk about all sorts of fellow travellers, the IDW, your James Lindsays, your Tim Pools, etc.
Sam Harris's, of course.
It's exactly, etc., etc., etc. Our most recent episode is an interview Daniel did with the two hosts of the Sounds Like Hate podcast. That's really good. Before that, we did a chat with Ina Mohammed Smith, who makes Woking Up and Polite Conversations. That's about critics of the IDW and new atheism and stuff like that. And we've done loads of episodes about people like Brett Weinstein and Tim Pool, as I say, and all the way back to Richard Spencer.
I was going to say right back to like the myriad dramas surrounding Richard Spencer, which is an epic in and of itself.
Absolutely, yeah. We've been doing that for a few years now, so I'm very proud of that. And I am on Twitter @_Jack_Graham_. It's a good way to keep up with everything I do, and I'm there too much, but there you go. I'm addicted. And I blog at Eruditorium Press. If you just go to Eruditorium Press and look for the Jack Graham tab, you will find everything. It's mostly links to IDSG these days, but if you scroll back through, you will find my blogging.
Excellent. Links to everything, by the way, guys, below.
Thank you.
Excellent. As for myself, guys, same as usual. You can find me knocking about here on Exaggerated Elegy. Currently doing a Let's Play Resident Evil 7. going to be moving on to 8 very soon, which I'm having lots of fun with. There is up for pre-order now at Perpetual Motion Machine Publications.com, links below. You can pre-order my short story collection, Born in Blood Volume 2. Which is going to be available in August, and you can also pre-order a double pack of Born in Blood Volume 1 and 2 together, which I would highly recommend, of course. You can find links to most of my published work at strangeplaygrounds.com, and like Jack, if you want to come and chat to me on Twitter, you can get me at Enigmatic Elegy. Jack, thanks once again. It's
Thank
been
you.
brilliant.
I should probably mention my Patreon, shouldn't I?
Yeah, of course. Again, links below, by the way, ladies and gents.
Where there is exclusive content, like me talking to Kit Power about Sherlock Holmes. So.
Yes, which is a long series, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of it to get through.
A lot of content there.
Yeah, we just recently released the one on the Man with the Twisted Lip, which, holy shit, that story.
Brilliant.
No, thank you for inviting me back. It's always a pleasure.
No, always. Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll get you back soon to do The Shining, yeah?
Great. Yeah, I'll talk about any excuse, basically.
Brilliant.
I'll talk your ear off about that.
Excellent. And thank you guys at home for listening. Until next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ha ha ha!